Hello out there in the world. Yeah, it's Friday. It seems like a Saturday to me, Glenn. I don't know why, but it's
Every day seems like a Saturday to me since
yeah.
COVID.
I took a trip to Memphis yesterday, and I don't know. It's just whacked everything off. But I'm glad it's Friday actually. That it's not the weekend. There's so much that you can't do on the weekends that you can do during the week. I don't know. Yeah, COVID's changed a lot. I mean, around here stores aren't open as 24/7 like they used to be. We're still feeling the ripples of that, Glenn.
I think we'll feel it for a while.
I do too. I do
I think
too.
we'll feel it. We'll feel it as citizens and the political part of it as well.
Well, I felt like the Twin Towers was like our Pearl Harbor. I don't know what I would liken the pandemic to.
um, I don't know. Pearl
Maybe
Harbor.
the Spanish flu or something like that.
Yeah, something like because
Yeah.
Pearl Harbor and the Twin Towers was sort of lasted an hour, and then there was the aftermath.
Seminal.
This is ongoing, isn't it?
Seminal points in history. Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, I've been watching some Doctor Who.
All right, I haven't watched that since Eccleston, but go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been going back and seeing Eccleston, and which has been 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe, but I've actually, went through the stuff you haven't watched. David Tennant. I'm up to about the last, the sixth season of Matt's term. And they hold up pretty well, actually. I mean,
the only thing I've seen of Matt Smith is that brilliant Van Gogh thing when he takes him to the Louvre to see his paintings.
I just watched those yesterday.
That 10 minutes is for me 10 minutes of the best TV ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. The actor who plays Van Gogh and that great speech that Bill Nye does. And, hello, Goblin. How are you doing?
Hey, Tree.
I think that would be in my top 5 pieces of TV.
I don't know if you saw, there was another episode that he briefly appeared in as Van Gogh.
No, I've only seen that bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So he makes a reappearance with Matt, and where he paints a painting of the TARDIS blowing up, and that's sort of like a warning that comes down, and they kind of touch on things that have happened during Matt's tenure where he meets Churchill. I don't know if you saw him where he meets, and they rip on one of Patrick Troughton's old Power of the Daleks, where he says, "I am your servant. I am your servant." But during World War II, he's saying, "I am your soldier." So they rip on. I like when they touch upon old episodes like that.
Yeah, they should do. Yeah, they should.
Yeah, yeah, little Easter eggs for the fans.
Yeah, I've not seen the new guy, but
yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, no, I don't want to.
No, it's the same with everything else. All this.
It is. There's a few gems out there, but very few. You
see, I think that I get criticized a lot in my life about not liking change, but that's not true. But change should only occur when it makes it better. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Well, I think they're going to say, to use an English term, when they talk about the early part of the 21st century, at least maybe the first 25 years, they mucked it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe at the latter part of the 20th century as well. I
think it's been on a downward spiral since Adam and Eve.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Clock's winding down.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Anyway, yeah. To me, I rewatching them sometimes, I kind of got engaged. I like the day before 20th anniversary of Eccleston's first broadcast. I decided on a whim, I'm going to start New Who and watch that again. And I think I've watched that first season of the New Doctor twice. So this was still fairly fresh, you know, and I knew the Rose Tyler theme ran all the way into David Tennant, which ratings wise, I think David Tennant was, you know, way up there, the highest, you know, of all the new doctors. And from what I understand from Nerdrotic, when you went to the conventions in like around all the early 2000s, you know, that was the main draw for people, you know, and I think it was because they come closer to a love story with him, and that had not really been fully exploited with Doctor Who, because he was sort of treated as this erogenous type character, this aloof character, right? That didn't get involved in that way.
So why change it? Because it didn't make it better.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion.
yeah.
You know,
well, I think it made it. I think it made it more palatable for modern audiences.
Well,
but there is some clever writing in that. I must give it to them. You know that there's.
Well, you see, these things are of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So nobody. It's like, let's say with I'm a bit out of touch with comics at the moment. This past 20 years, to be fair, but
right.
as I understand it now, Nick Fury, that I knew,
right,
fought in the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
But now I understand he fought in Desert Shield.
Right. Yeah.
Well, what's the point? Because if I'm going to remake Ben-Hur, I'm not going to put it on the streets of New York, am I?
Well, you know, it's fiction, Glenn, and one of the cleverest. I think Ben Grimm and Reed fought in the Korean War in the early days. You know,
they were in World War II.
Were they in World War II?
Yeah.
Okay, World War II then. And so one of the clever things that I read in around 76 or 77 was a storyline where the Krees made 3 of them older, and not the Human Torch. He was the youngest of them anyway. And so when they were restored, they were like, we're younger than when we first got our powers. It was a story reset where and they were even a little slightly more powerful than they were when they got their powers. So I thought that was very clever. After about a decade or maybe 15 years of stories about the Fantastic Four, they hit a reset and said, this is why they're, you know, I mean, I thought it was very clever of them to infuse. I mean, let's face it, Superman never grows old from when he first came out in 1937. Although, you know, later they write in, okay, there's an Earth 2 Golden Age and there's an Earth 1, you know. And, you know, I know they later depicted Superman with gray temple around his temples and stuff.
You see, there are 2 films recently that they've done a remake of. There's both with Will Smith. The one where he's the last person with all the vampires, whatever that film's called. And that's a remake of the Omega Man,
mm-hmm.
with Charlton Heston, which is a classic science fiction film.
Right.
And they update it, but all they've and especially iRobot. Have you read the book iRobot?
I have not. No.
Right. Well, it's nothing like that.
Yeah.
All they've done basically is take the title.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point of that? Just have it call it something else. It's a good film. I enjoy it with Will Smith, and I like him. He's good, but it's not the science fiction classic. So they just steal the title. I just don't see the point. It's like, as I understand it today, that there's no Captain America. Steve Rogers is dead, and the other guy wears his costume, so he's Captain America now. And what they've done, I've said this before lots of times on podcasts, what they've done is, when I used to buy Spider-Man in the mid to late 60s, I was reading a book about Peter Parker, who happened to be Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Now it's anybody who puts the uniform on is Spider-Man, and that's just ridiculous. That means I'm Captain America because a good friend of mine many years ago, for a fancy dress, made me a Captain America costume, which I still have. So I'm Captain America. Stupid.
Well, I hate it when they break their own rules, you know.
Well, rules are meant to be broken, but some,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, if you do it in a clever way, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, they sit down
yeah.
and they think they've got Captain America, got Steve Rogers. He's been around for 70 years. Right, I've got a great idea. Let's kill him and put the other guy in the suit. And now he's Captain America. Wow, that's genius level, isn't it?
Or in the comics, they said he was a double agent. He really worked for Hydra all those years.
Give me a break. You know, it's just doing something for the sake of it. Just.
So
Captain
would you
America.
say sort of like trash tabloid journalism, whatever, or writing?
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. What hasn't been done? I know Steve Rogers hasn't died.
Yeah.
We'll
just
kill him.
For the sensationalism of it.
Yeah, it's not for
rubbish.
Me. It's not rubbish. For me. Yeah, it's not for me.
Yeah. To use a British term, it's rubbish.
Yeah. Did you see that thing this morning on Randy's show where somebody asked why the four of us kept changing accents and being British? You see that question? And I said, it's because two of us are British.
Yeah. We actually put a concerted effort behind that.
So, you know, anyway.
Now, you're the creator of the logo for the Atlantean for
yes,
Randy
I am,
and Russ, and that
I
needs to be known. And I challenged you with a task a while back. Yeah. Now, okay, so you did two logos, right? You did the Shadow Kingdom logo.
Well, to be fair, my Atlantean logo is more like that, and Russ has changed it so that, you know, so it's his logo to change. So he's changed it to the one he uses now. He shouldn't have done, but he did.
Yeah. But now you did the Atlantean, right? You did do the Atlantean logo as well.
Yes, but he's changed it. He's changed it to what it is now. It looks more like that one.
Modified it a little bit. Okay.
Are you listening, Russ? He's ruined it. No, I'm only kidding.
Now, where does that fall? There's very few artists that really, you know, they're usually into one or another. I know there's some that do both, that actually draw, create like you do, but also gets into the lettering. It seems like the lettering with the weights and the, you know, that's a science all of itself. Sort of like there's cooking and then there's baking.
I've always been an artist who likes to challenge myself with every aspect of art. So that's painting. I do oil painting. I do colored painting, colored inks painting. I do pencil work. I do ink work. I do lettering. I do publishing. And I even when I design. I even design the comic pages and the book. I do the whole thing. Everything. I always have done.
Do you consider yourself a Renaissance man? Because that sounds like old.
Somebody said definition. That to me. Well, I can live with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it's all to do with artwork, and you know, I like the lettering, and it's only these podcasts that have made me realize how much I do like lettering things. You know, I mean, I've got one comic here from when I was 14, right? My Black Diamond comic. This is actually the real one, hand colored in, hand drawn, and lettered by me. And I've shown this before, and I'm going to say this. I'm quite proud. Look at this lettering. I'm 14 years old. Look at that lettering there.
Oh, 14 years old. Wow.
14 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm drawing this. This is my comic, The Black Diamond. And you know, I've still got them. Obviously, this is from 1969.
Wow.
The oldest art I've got is in my archive, and it's drawings of the moon and the lunar module from when I was 12. So you know, and that's when I'm 14.
Oh, okay.
That's my standard when I'm 14.
Well, I've got to say, at 14, you were more accomplished than I was.
I think at 14, I'm more accomplished than I am now.
Oh wow. Okay.
So, but yeah, I've always approached it. The whole thing, you know, like I'll show you this. I'll show you this. This is from Hatch. This is all created from my imagination and drawn, penciled, inked, and coloured.
Right. And again, what kind of colors do you use? What kind of medium do you use? Just
I
mixed
use
medium, or
I use all sorts of things. I leave pencil under it. I put colored crayon pencil, that kind of thing. Colored pencils, anything that gets the job done. I'm not against anything, but it has to move it on.
Yeah.
And obviously, I like I like my artwork to be on the board. This is some pencil work of Rogue Trooper I did 40 years ago.
Oh wow, yeah. Now he was the soldier that had the talking rifle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, they're talking to him there. That's from 40 odd years ago. I just like pencil. I like the feel of the pencil on the board. I use cartridge paper. I use artboard. I use anything to get my hands on. Thanks, Genko. I like drawing. I just like drawing. I like writing. I do the lot. If anybody wants me to ink anything, just let me know. Letter it. I'll do it.
It was comic. What? Okay. All right. You mentioned inking, so I was going to say, and I'll go ahead and say it. But now with inking, I really feel like since I've inked other artists, that's when it really comes to life. Is the inking part of it. You can't underestimate the inking part of it. Of course, you have to have a good understructure to work on, right?
Yeah, you gotta have the everything is in the penciling. That's like the foundation of a building. If the foundations aren't deep enough, the thing will fall over. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter how well it's made. It'll fall over. The visual storytelling in the pencils is the most. That's what you've got to get. Now there are two kinds of inker. There's the inker who just follows the pencil, and then there's an embellisher who enhances the pencil. And if you look at, say, Jack Kirby's work in the 60s, if you look at Frank Giacoia inking, he's just going, I'm not putting him down because he's fantastic, don't get me wrong. He's not putting that much in it in terms of embellishment like Joe Sinnott does. Yeah. Joe Sinnott really makes that stuff come out. And like I said, Frank Giacoia is one of my favorite inkers. Joe Sinnott is my favorite embellisher. If you look at Conan the Barbarian, John Buscema and Conan the Barbarian, which you'll know, you've seen his pencils. His pencils are so good. John Buscema's pencils work is so good, it's basically breakdowns on Conan. And then they'll give it to somebody like Alfredo Alcala to ink it, and you've seen that stuff, and it's absolutely sublime, But even so, the pencil, the solid, brilliant pencil work needs to be underneath it for the foundation of it. Because you can't necessarily save a bad pencil drawing unless you start reworking it, and you shouldn't need to do that as an inker or an embellisher.
Yeah, I mean, he's in a world all his own. He just, it's amazing just looking at the preliminary drawings that I have in my collection, that in just a few strokes of the pencil, he can capture angles, perspective, mood. It's just amazing what he does in the very fewest lines that he can. I guess Toth and some other artists are kind of like that, but in different ways.
Yeah, John Buscema he's got to be in my top 5 pencilers.
I do too. I think so.
He is that good
because he saw it up here.
Yeah,
he really saw it up here.
Well, the furthest distance is for an artist is from the brain to the end of the arm on the hand. That's 20 billion light years down there, and you don't always get down on the paper what you see in your head, So but that's the challenge, That's another thing. It's the challenge of things I like, especially my work through the years. Like I'll show you an example here. One of the places I worked at, they wanted me to do some, or I suggested to them that I do some. Drawings from the flat plan of the factory that was next to the offices where I work. So I got this drawing is literally from the flat plan, and I did a perspective drawing of it and marked it all up. And I even put the people in who worked at the stations.
Right.
And that is me walking along. But and I just like the challenge of it. The drawing that just from a flat plan, from an architect's flat plan, was a real challenge, I
Right.
love
Yeah.
doing it.
It stretches you as a creator. Are you
Yeah.
now you met Kirby a couple times. Are you
Yep.
surprised that he said in his own words that Wally Wood was his favorite embellisher that's worked on his stuff?
Am I surprised? No. Did he say that?
Mm-hmm.
No, not at all. No, Bollywood's brilliant
Yeah.
inker or embellisher. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess it was the material because he embellished his stuff on like Sky Masters and a
Yes, he
few
did.
other.
Yeah, with Dick Ayers, and he did that. He did a lot in the Fantastic Four with Daredevil, didn't he? He inked the Daredevil character, and I think it was issue 47, just before Galactus thing. He inked just the Daredevil character because he was doing Wally Wood was on Daredevil, so they wanted to maintain that look, like what's it called? Murphy Anderson did on his Third World stuff.
Yeah, that's
with
on
Superman.
Superman's face. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
about to make that same analogy. I did not
Yeah.
know that about Wally Wood doing the inking just on the Daredevil character
Yeah.
throughout the story. But
Yeah.
it does look a lot like Wood stuff, and perhaps he did the covers that I'm familiar with. But
you see, Wally Wood again, he's in my top 5, I would imagine, because he does what I do. He does penciling, inking, he does lettering as well. If you look at his early Mad stuff and stuff like that in the 50s, a lot of the lettering he does as well. So he does the whole thing.
Did you were around? Of course, you were in England at the time, I assume. Did you see his tower stuff at the time with the
Thunder Agents? Yeah.
Thunder Agents? Yeah.
Yeah, because what happened there was that in quick succession, or it seemed like quick succession to us mere fans, he and Steve Ditko left Marvel at about 65, 66. And then a year later, Thunder Agents came out, and both those artists were in those comics. So it was a real treat because we still had Kirby and everybody else at Marvel. And then Wally Wood and others and Steve Ditko did the Tower comics. So,
right.
Yeah, fabulous.
I kind of know why Ditko left, but why did Wally Wood feel like he needed to leave Marvel? Do you know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think he got fed up with the structure of it, as Kirby did, as Ditko did. I think. I don't know. I really don't know. But I imagine it was. And that's why he decided to do Tower comics. I think he had more control. He wanted the control over the character, and he didn't own Daredevil or whatever. But he was responsible for turning Daredevil's atrocious Kirby design costume, that yellow and black thing that he wears, and Wally Wood turned him into the all red.
Yeah,
with those beautiful
7.
Yeah, with those beautiful drawings on
that yellow costume. Yeah,
I think also I don't know. This is just my thought, so I don't know. I think he wanted to be on a more prestigious title as well, because Daredevil was sort of anybody's, wasn't it? It's like Nick Fury, Agents of Shield. It was sort of anybody who seemed to be walking past got the job, because everybody worked on Shield, didn't they? Steranko, Buscema, Kirby, Sinnott, lots of different. I mean, they're all good, but it's like they weren't given a regular assignment. But I may be wrong.
Yeah, and I mean, Steranko's first work was that spy comic that lasted like 3 issues, Spy Master or whatever it was. Was his first thing for Harvey.
Right.
I think first published stuff. He had a very Kirby-esque as well, like Barry Windsor Smith and a lot of them did at the beginning. I think Kirby was asked about that, and he just encouraged artists to be themselves and not necessarily mimic his style.
Well, what Stan Lee did, to be fair, he was misunderstood, wasn't he? He told them to draw like Kirby, so they did, but he didn't mean that. He meant the way he tells a story and paces it. He meant the storytelling
very
aspect.
Dynamic.
Yeah. So, but they thought he meant draw like Kirby, and that's why Barry Smith's early stuff I think is appalling. Is it Avengers and Daredevil? It's terrible.
Yeah.
But then he goes into Conan. But you see, Barry Smith is more, I think he's an illustrator and painter. He's not a comic book artist. Jack Kirby's a comic book artist. And when he went into Conan, you've got that more illustrative style. I don't know whether you've seen his paintings. His paintings are absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I think he's an illustrator rather than a comic book artist.
Yeah, I mean, he did portfolios, I guess, through the 70s and onward,
Yeah,
but it was really in the early 80s when he started leaning into that more
yeah,
Windsor Smith style and
yeah,
painterly thing. I think
yeah,
around the time he did Machine Man,
yeah,
that
yeah.
limited series, and you know,
See, I don't think I wouldn't call myself a comic book artist because I don't because I do lots of other things, and through my career,
well,
I've done
I
lots
know
of
from
illustration and
I
painting and
know
stuff
from
like
the
that.
Fire and Ice DVD, which is sort of Frank Zeta, rotoscope type stuff. He worked on that, and they asked Art, well, what do you think about the legacy? Because they were showing on the extras of the DVD one of the two museums on Frazetta and his paintings and stuff, and they were talking about the legacy, and they asked John Buscema, what where's his place, and he's like, well, he was like the rest of us. I thought this was the most frank and honest answer. uh he was a commercial artist like the rest of
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
and
Well,
that's no slight. I'm sure
no,
there was
no,
respect in
but
that.
Jack Kirby was never a commercial artist, was he? He was a comic book artist right from day one. You
Do
know
you think he was too good?
who?
It's been said that Kirby was so good, that he was too good at what he did, that he really didn't get the respect that he deserved, and that he wasn't that great a negotiator, because
Um,
I
well,
don't know.
all of the above. I don't think anybody was appreciated. I still don't think they're appreciated because I think people think that comics are for kids, which they
Yeah.
are, but they're also for everybody.
Hmm.
And but Kirby, I think I'm going to put it. I think Kirby was acknowledged. I think he was appreciated, but I don't think he got the money he deserved, considering that he created everything. We've spoken about that before.
Right.
Um, I think it's a crime or criminal, not a crime, but I think it's criminal that everybody thinks Stan Lee drew everything. I went into
Well,
an
I
art.
never, I never thought that, but yeah, a
Oh,
lot of
people
people do.
do. People do.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
because you know. But
Yeah.
people do. They know
Yeah.
who's. Let's put it this way: they know who Stanley is. They don't know who Jack Kirby is.
Exactly. I mean, Stan Lee presents on comics that he had nothing to do
Yeah,
with for
I went
decades.
in it. I went to an art gallery a couple of years ago, and there were these massive door-sized posters of Marvel covers, and it
Hmm.
was it was the art of Stan Lee, and
Wow.
those, and he never picked a pencil up like Walt Disney never drew anything.
Hmm.
Like everybody knows who Walt Disney is, but nobody know who did the drawings. They think Walt Disney did. Right. I went into this gallery, and the Steranko Hulk cover where he's holding up the title where it's
Yep.
crumbling. Well, if you
Hmm.
remember that, it says Steranko down the side,
Yeah.
right? And
Exactly.
you would know it was Steranko anyway, as
Yeah.
I would.
Incredible Hulk, king size annual
And that,
number two.
yeah, and they had the Captain America 100 cover, the ink by
Hmm. Big old fist, Kirby
Sid,
fist.
Sid Shaw's, right?
Hmm.
Kirby never signed his work at Marvel, but there was a John Buscema cover, but I think it was a Thor. I'm not sure, can't remember. But it was the Stan Lee collection, not Stan Lee art, the Stan Lee collection. And
Hmm.
the guy in the shop, right, thought that Stan Lee had drawn them all. Now I can see the different styles as you can.
Right. Right.
Most people probably can't, but he didn't draw anything. And I told the guy, I said that's Jack Kirby, that's John Buscema, that's John Romita. Go and look it up. That's Gil Kane. Go and look it up. And he was amazed.
There's one artist that you could probably fool me now that we've kind of looked at some of his work. If you said, okay, Mobius did this,
Yeah,
that, and this, I would go, okay, I believe you. Sure, Glenn, because he's got so many different styles.
he
He
does. Yeah,
he
yeah,
blows my mind. I mean, over time, you see like a Gene Colan, you see them evolve
yeah,
or
yeah,
de-evolve.
yeah,
Sometimes they get worse, they get sloppy, they get older, they just don't put the effort into it that they used to. It becomes less important to them. I don't know. But uh that guy, my gosh, he's just so many different things. I've never seen an artist, just it's almost like they're three or four different people.
yeah, He was fabulous. He's again, he's in my top 5. Do you know I've got about 50 artists in my top 5?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
People,
big
go ahead.
question here. Here's the H-bomb, Big Bertha dropping down on you. What influence has comics? I mean, what has comics done for you? How's it changed your life? I know that's a very big question.
It's certainly entertained me over the past 60 years, and I've got different styles. I think I used to try and draw like Jack Kirby, like everybody else did. Daphne Lage was very kind and said my drawings remind her of Mobius, so that can't be bad, can it?
Wow.
You know, it depends. I do different styles as well. It depends what you're doing. I think, you know, I worked in advertising and graphics for most of my career, and you have to adapt to it, you know, to the work. You know, Kirby was drawing superheroes, so he drew superheroes. You know.
Yeah.
So
did you try and make it fun? I mean, when you were doing that, how did you keep your sanity, or did you?
Yeah, you'd have to ask other people that. Yeah, I was fortunate in my career because I always had a different job on my desk every couple of days. I would be doing Postman Pat. Have you seen Postman Pat?
I have not.
It's like it's a cartoon show. It's a cartoon comic. I drew Postman Pat. I drew My Little Pony, and then the next day I would be designing a magazine, and then the next day I would be doing photography and stuff like that, and then the next day I would be writing. So I've always had a different job, not every day, but you know, different
enough to keep it interesting and challenging.
Yeah, and I did my own comic strips in the 80s, and wrote those and published those. So I do different things. That's why I write books and why I draw books as well, because I like to do both. It depends where I am in the head, and I just do both.
Well, that's a good segue. We're here to talk about the wonderful work of Glenn Fleming, because how many books do you reckon you've done at this point? Now,
I've got 12.
That would be publications, periodicals, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I don't know about that. I've got 12 published, right? And they come in different, I don't know what the word is, genres. I don't know.
Okay.
I've got 2 on soccer.
Yeah, I know you did one of these last year, right?
Yeah, this one was last year, yeah.
Okay.
This one was 20 years ago. You know, one of the biggest thrills I ever got was when this was published. I was going away to Spain, and I went in the airport, and there it was on the shelf. And I've got a photograph of me somewhere holding this book up, which was a good thrill.
I had no idea that was your second book on soccer.
Yeah. I've written lots of magazines. I used to write, I don't know if you've heard of Coronation Street, which is the world's longest soap. That's been going since 1960. I worked on co-wrote and designed the official magazine for that for a year. I've also published that one, which I think you've just come across. But this isn't my this is my publication, but it's got different people writing about their you know, what Kirby did for them.
And what's the page count on that particular one? Is that it?
This one is, I will tell you, it's 120 pages.
120 pages. Okay. All right.
And this is on Amazon. All my stuff's on Amazon.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you that if everything's unavailable, if there's some that's out of print, or if they're all available.
You can get
where people can find them.
They're on eBay and stuff. But if you get in touch with me, you can get copies of this. This is Crikey, the Great British Comics magazine. This is from the aughts, and you know, it's just the black and, well, this one's a color one, but it's mainly black and white, and it just talks about, you know, British comics, which is in a clue, you know, the Great British Comics magazine. Right. And then the companion to that was Super Spies and Secret Agents, which details film, TV, and strips as well. Man from Uncle, right? You know, Mr. Ed. He was a spy for it. Mr. Ed was a spy for an episode.
I did not know that.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then we got Jerry Anderson, Stingray.
And I've probably seen that, you know, because I used to watch a little bit of that, and Francis the Talking Mule, and
on the back we've got the gorgeous Dinah Rigg.
Diana Rigg, yeah. I mean, Mrs. Bond in Her
Yes, yeah,
Majesty's Secret
yeah,
Service.
yeah,
As a child, I thought that, you know, he wasn't the original Bond, so I kind of rejected it, and it was more of a love story. I thought in that one, I think it's, to use a British term, brilliant. I think it's brilliant now.
yeah.
They could
It
have
is.
maybe cast a better Blofeld than Telly Savalas, and I hate that where Donald Pleasant also played a scarred Blofeld.
Yeah,
Um, I like that they did not show Blofeld for a
yes,
long time. I
yeah,
kind of like the mystery of not, and I've kind of based one of my characters, the director, on Blofeld, and the shadow secret government, because it seems like if you want to go evil, then you have to get to the root of it, which is usually some kind of shadow puppet master pulling the
yeah,
strings, right? So that's
yeah,
a great device, storytelling
yeah,
device.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
I write all kinds of things, and relevant to the news today with Donald Trump and all that. There's my 2 books about the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, 2 books. Now, see, I
Yeah,
thought you had just written one. Okay.
no, this one, Two Faces, is a fictionalized. It's a novel.
Okay.
It's from Oswald's point of view, so there's a lot not in it that I know about because it's he's thinking in this book. It's
Because
from his
he
point
said
of
he
view.
was set up.
He was,
Yeah.
and this is a more factual one.
Okay. And have you been paying attention of any of the new
Yeah,
release stuff?
yeah. Well, they've not
Like,
released anything, have they? They've released 80 pages that's going to take people 10 years to read, and there's nothing in there. They'll still have Oswald in that window, and he wasn't in the window.
yeah.
But
Hey, Tank Fair.
But like I said before, I wrote the book and I also designed the cover and I did the drawing for the cover. So, I do the whole thing.
And you're working on a war comic right now, I know.
I am, yeah. It's still top secret. It's very, very slow.
Yeah.
It keeps getting bigger, even though I'm trying to get it done. But I was thinking of doing it in 4 parts actually and getting them out there rather than wait for the huge volume. That it's going to be. It's going to be about 150 pages long when I finished. Thanks, Tank. I've written and published 2 science fiction novels. That one is illustrated. It's got illustrations in, but they're only in black and white for some reason. I need to get
Are they like chapter illustrations for the different chapters?
Yeah. This is one of the drawings from it. You can see here. This one. This is right. That's done on board. I like to work on board.
Mm-hmm.
I like to do lots of things, and this one is this doesn't have illustrations in, but it does have computer created work in it.
Okay.
So these are all on Amazon. Now this one, my dad was a paratrooper on D-Day, and right. I wrote and drew this about 5 years ago, illustrated it as well. And the reason it's called 8 seconds is because when he jumped out of his C-47 aircraft on D-Day, it took him 8 seconds to get to the ground. That's how low they were.
I did prison ministry with the guy that actually broke his neck. He got caught in the slipstream of the bomber, and it broke his neck partially, and he fell in a field. And actually, it was the German soldiers. The locals were going to kill him, but the German soldiers came in and kind of saved him. And he was detained at a house. And years later, when his daughter married and moved to Germany, and he went to go visit them, guess what house they bought to live in?
Wow.
It was the house where he was detained as a prisoner for a little while.
Did they know they were buying that house?
No.
It was just a coincidence they bought that house.
Yeah, it was something stranger than truth,
Well, when I wrote this book, this was for I think it was the 75th anniversary of D-Day, so it's 5 years ago. What I wanted to do, and I've always wanted to do this, was make a parachute jump. And I found out that there were some guys that do a parachute jump into Merville, which is near a place called Weestrum near Normandy, where my dad landed, and took a gun emplacement there. with his colleagues, and I was
Mhm.
going to do the parachute jump, but
Right.
I got persuaded by Helen. My back's not too good, and I'm getting older, so maybe I shouldn't do
Hey,
it.
you could
So
do. I mean, Bush did at 80 something with
yeah,
a
but
little bit of help.
but that was a tandem one. I want to do it on my own. Well, these guys get dressed up like paratroopers, and what they did,
Mhm.
I sent one of them, George Moody. His dad was a colleague of my dad's, and he's in the book. So I got in touch with him and all that, and then I sent him a couple of copies of the book, and he sent me one back. He sent it back, and he'd got all the people who jump with him into Mayville. They do it every year, and he got them all to sign the book.
Wow.
How good is that?
Wow.
So
That's
there's
yeah.
2 pages of signatures in my
Wow.
dad's book of the people who made the jump, and he jumped it in with him. He had it in his tunic. So
Uh-huh.
this book has jumped out of a plane into France. how good is that? I'm really chuffed with that one.
And your father's kind of inspiration for your war book that's slowly coming about, right? That you're working on now,
No,
right?
no,
No,
no, no. It's
not
nothing to do with my dad. No, no,
no. Okay.
no.
Somehow I've got it in my mind that when
I
I
know.
think of your war book that you're working on, it was
Well,
kind of
people.
inspired by your father.
Well, rest assured that people have seen your shows because you said that, and they all think that they keep asking me about it. But no, it's not.
Okay, all right. I'm just
It's
false
not about my
propaganda,
dad.
folks.
It's not
Okay,
about my dad at all. But
okay,
I'll be releasing something soon, I hope. But it's
okay.
very slow.
Yeah. Is it challenging just because you've never worked on a war type thing
No,
before?
it's just life getting in the way and things happening and
Yeah.
losing confidence in me drawing and all
Well,
sorts of
let
things
me
going on.
ask you this: Why war? Why you just want a commentary? You got this story in your mind that you feel like you have to tell?
I know you're trying to get information out of me, Rex. The thing
A little
is
bit.
that this story has never been told before. It's a true story and it's never been told before.
Okay.
Let me
Okay.
put it that way.
All right. Yeah.
So now I've got to get it out now.
Yeah.
It's just slow.
And you got a book on Easter Island. I know that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I like to
Mhm.
travel. Been to a few places.
Yeah.
Rapa Nui, Easter Island. There again. I wrote the book. It's full of I took 1,000 photographs while I was there of all the Moai. See them there,
Hmm.
and all the sunsets, beautiful sunsets. Just a second, lovely sunsets.
Yeah. That almost looks like Memorial Park, with the
Yeah,
mesas and everything out in the American
and
desert.
it contains a photograph of when I nearly died.
Yeah.
It was done. I've shown you this before, haven't
The
I?
wind almost blew you
No,
off the ledge, right?
I went up this cliff. It's about 300 foot high, and below me is the Pacific Ocean with shark infested water.
Hmm.
So I climbed up this mountainside and got into this cave. Set my timer up on the camera. I can't find the picture. Set my timer up on the picture, and I thought it'd be really neat to have a photograph of me with the frame of the cave opening
Right.
and the Pacific Ocean, the sky behind me, right? So I set the camera up on the tripod and moved towards the edge, and it's 300 feet straight down. And if you survive that, a shark will eat you. And then as I'm getting near the edge, I suddenly realized that I'm sliding because it was on an angle, and I was sliding towards the edge. And the camera's on a timer, and it clicked. And then just as it clicked, I got me sort of my footing back, so to speak. I'm trying to, and there's a picture of me just as I'm nearly going. Oh, there it is. This picture of me as I'm just about to go over the edge of a 300-foot drop.
Wow. Yeah, that could have been the last picture of you,
I'm photographing me death. But
Uh-huh.
like I said, I like to write the book. These are all my pictures. There's 1,000. I took 1,000 photographs and 6 hours of film, and I incorporated the history of the island with my journey. That's why it's called the personal journey, because it's
Well, I've
my
been
journey.
seeing some things just like about the declassified, JFK papers. I've seen stuff about Easter Island where the head's just like part of a larger
Yeah,
body on some of these, right?
all of them. Yeah, there's this one here somewhere if I can find it. they're massive. You get these ridiculous stories about how they roll them along logs like they did pyramids in Egypt. It just didn't happen. They're too heavy. They're too big. This guy here, I'm 6'1", right? I'm 6'1". So this guy's 18 feet tall. That's me there next to him, and he's that same height below the ground.
Wow.
So he's 30 odd feet tall. He weighs 60 tons.
So were they carved in place? How were they placed, do you think?
Well, there's the place called the Quarry, and it's called tuff, and it's a really sort of it's not like granite. It's not too hard, and they carve them out of that, and then there are 800 of these things all around the island, right? And they all look into the island.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's the myth is, or the story is that they're all guarding the island, and there's 800 of them, and the island is about 7 miles long at its longest point. So they allegedly roll these 60-foot, 36 feet high monsters, rolled them on logs 7 miles down to the other end of the island, right, and then stood them up. It's just ridiculous. But I forgot what I was going to say. There's 800 of them, and the only place where they're in a line. They're on a platform called an ahu, right? AHU, ahu, and they lift them up and they stand on these ahu, and they're sacred, and you don't go on them. And I didn't. I have a bit of respect for things. You're not allowed to go on them, so I didn't. And the only place that they're looking out to see is the place called Ahu Akivi.
Okay.
Now, and I think there's 7 of them in a line. Now, get this, right? Get this. Easter Island has one of the longest runways in the world, believe it or not. And it was I don't know about now, but it's maintained by NASA because it's an abort runway for a space shuttle, because they go over that way and they could land there, right? And so the Americans maintained it. Now, somebody, right, get this, this is where it gets spooky. There's only one of these Moai on the island with his eyes in.
Okay.
Yeah. But they found they made out of coral. They found a lot of coral eyes, and there's only one guy with them in. But at Akivi, they're all looking at a spot in the sky. This guy measured it, and he got all the eyes are looking at the spots in the sky, the same spot in the sky, and that coincidentally is the point where the shuttle would come in, if it was going to come in. And these guys have been standing there nearly 1,000 years, and I don't think there were any shuttles 1,000 years ago.
Right.
Certainly not from what we made.
It is geographically, it's probably north, south, east, or west in any direction. It's probably the remotest area on the planet. Is that correct?
It's the remotest inhabited place on Earth. Yeah.
Inhabited. Okay.
Yeah.
So are there like caretakers on the island?
Well, the people live there, don't they? There's the guy with the eyes.
Okay. Yeah.
There's about 1,500 people live there. They were annexed by Chile in 18 something. They're not keen on that because they're 2,500 miles from Chile.
You're right.
So they don't.
Right.
So they don't like that. But they speak Spanish and everything. So nobody speaks Rapa Nui so much these days. The kids aren't learning it and all that kind of thing. But yeah, there's about 1,500 people live there, I think.
So I mean, what's their? I guess their only sort of their only thing is like tourism, right? Or what?
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, it's all geared toward tourism at this point.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I flew to Madrid, Spain, 3 hours, down for 2, and then 14 hours to Santiago, Chile, and then from there it's about a 5-hour flight out of there across the Pacific Ocean. And I got some film of me landing on that. It's quite spectacular. I would say to people, if you get the chance to go, go because it's crazy. It's mind blowing. The place. It's really strange when you get
I've
there.
actually
It
got a
feels strange.
story and had a story for the last 3 years that deals with Easter Island, so that or
Yeah,
incorporates that. And
yeah.
you
But
might
it
have been
isn't.
an influence on that. I can't remember. It's
It
been
is
like,
an. It is an incredible place.
yeah. It's
Um,
just, if you see one of those stone faces, you know where you're at
yeah,
because it's unique. It's
yeah,
just like if you see, although pyramids are all around the world, if you
yeah.
see pyramids in desert, you think Egypt
Well,
automatically.
well, yeah. There are pyramids all around the world, and
Mhm.
also if you look at Why, he was like basically just a tall stone. We have those at Stonehenge, and there's all sorts of places all over the world in Peru, places like that, and Bolivia, where they have these just tall stone things, and I think they're pretty much the same. Um, you've got there are some um, strange coincidences as well with the regard the pyramids with the guys with the handbags. Have you seen those guys with the handbags? They have like a handbag. They're holding like a handbag on the drawings on the walls. Well,
Mhm.
there's similar in Easter Island as well, and you know,
Yeah.
I think way back the either the seas were lower or people were trading all over the world.
Land bridges, right. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, in Pompeii, they found a statue from India,
well, there you go. There you
so
go.
that's, I mean,
Well,
back then
they
when you
found that
walk
guy.
it,
Yeah, they
it's,
found that guy in the Valley of the Kings, didn't they? I mean, let's get this straight. Nobody was ever buried in a pyramid. They don't bury people in pyramids. They're not tombs. They're buried
mhm,
in the Valley of the Kings, which is about 400 miles away or something. And they found this guy. He was on the hieroglyphic, and they found him down a corridor, turning left down a tunnel. They found him in this really obscure place, and he was there. This mummy, and they did a. It was so well preserved. They did an autopsy on him, and he had contents of his last dinner in his stomach, but he also had cocaine and cocoa bean,
wow.
which the ancient Egyptians didn't have
Yeah.
allegedly because they're from
Yeah.
South America. So either he went to South America or somebody came from South America with the stuff.
Do you think that the governments of the world have hidden
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
things from us about, have we lost some of the technology, that
I
we
think.
once had as a human race?
Yeah, I think what's. I don't know whether we've lost the technology or not, but I do believe that there was a great flood
Hmm.
and it wiped out most of the world's population. I believe that, and I think that like with the dinosaurs, when that meteorite hit 65 million years ago and wiped out the dinosaurs, I think if you look at the history of the Earth, that life begins very quickly and advances very quickly. So you've got the dinosaurs, and then a big rock hits the Earth and kills all the dinosaurs, and then 63 years later, you've got man. I think man's been around a long time, longer than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see tracks of various
Yeah,
huge animals and human feet
yeah.
there
For
together.
instance,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that this tsunami happened because another meteorite struck, and what that begs the question. You see, is that are there more meteorites out or asteroids out there that will hit us? And the answer is yes. And then that begs the question when. And I think that's part of the cover up because if they told everybody an asteroid was going to hit the Earth in 5 years and everybody was going to die, the place would be chaos, wouldn't it?
Your books are a reflection of you in a way, your creation, your baby. They're quite diverse. You've got books on travel and
Yeah.
historical and sports. It's amazing the diversity of books. Why such a diverse book? It's just
It's just
you
my
have
mind.
many different interests.
Yeah, yeah. I like all sorts of things. I like to learn things. I read a lot. I must have read about 700 books by now. I
Hmm.
read a lot. I like to. I think I have quite an open mind about things. I like to. I remember when I was a kid, we had an encyclopedia, and I'd be about 9 or 10 at the time, and I heard on the news that there'd been a flood in um, Bangladesh or somewhere like that, and I didn't know where that was. I thought everything was in Europe. So I got the encyclopedia and I found out where it was. And then you think, oh, Bangladesh is near India. Oh, it's near Iran, and that kind of thing. Then I heard about the Easter Island thing. It was a teacher at school who read a book to us about it. Mm-hmm. So I found out where it was on a map, and then I started darting about everywhere and finding that, Germany was next to Poland, which was next to Russia, the Soviet Union, and that kind of thing. I just learned that way. So I started to read about places. And when I was doing my JFK research initially, I used to go down to the big library in Manchester and sit there all day. And in any given day, I'd be in Dallas, New York, Washington, Saigon, in my head, reading books and putting all the dots together and all that kind of thing. And I like to do that. And then I like to travel, so I went to a few of these places. I went to Dealey Plaza in Dallas and all that kind of thing. And I like knowledge. Knowledge is a great thing.
Yeah, and you got to meet on a couple of your travels, which you did a couple books on him, Jack Kirby. What was the high point of that? Just meeting him and Roz and the family.
The high point. I went twice, and the high points were meeting Roz, because she was such a wonderful, beautiful woman. I can't describe her. I try and describe her in the book. And while the thrill was to meet Jack and be in his presence and just talk to him,
right.
I think I'd have to say the highlight was meeting her, because she was such a fantastic person. She's gorgeous, and she was just so loving and friendly. And she didn't have to. When we got there the first time, they'd made lunch for us, and she didn't have to do that. I was expecting to be there for 10 minutes. I was there for, I think it was 7 hours. And
how do you felt like they felt about it? Here's a gentleman that flew all the way from the UK to see them out in California. How do you think they personally thought about that, or did they?
I think they were thrilled that somebody would come that far twice, and I don't think they fed me for that reason, but I think that was one of these, like you say about these Jewish ladies feed everybody, don't they? Apparently,
don't let them go away hungry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think most people are like that anyway. But I think they were. Jack was very humble man. He knew what he was. He knew what he'd done, but he was very humble. And I've said it in the book. And I was sitting there in this guy's house who's had a big influence on my artwork and my reading over the years. I'm sitting there with him, this legend, eating lunch, and I couldn't eat. I couldn't even speak. I was 33. I and I wasn't a kid, and I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, I shouldn't be here. What am I doing here? And he was talking, because Jack liked to talk his stories and all that kind of thing. And every now and again he'd say, "What was your name again?" to me. And I couldn't speak. And he was laughing, and Roz was laughing, and they were all laughing at me because I was 33 and I couldn't open my mouth.
It's funny at 33. 33 is a very special number for me, because I had collected comics all the way up to that time. There's not been but a couple years that I haven't collected comics, and that was like 99 and 2000, and I was 33 then, and I was working with the homeless, so I just kind of set society, I'm comics aside, to embrace society and the homeless, and learn about humanity and my own humanity, interacting, with what I felt like was more important work, at the time.
Yeah.
And so that kind of sticks with me. And in that, I started doing the prison ministry as well. So it's interesting. At 33, you were kind of embracing and meeting one of your idols. And I was kind of like setting that aside,
See, I was with a partner then, and she was
hey, Mark.
She excuse me. She was the person who was never going to be impressed by anybody.
Mm-hmm.
She went out. She was the most impressed because she was determined not to be. Do you understand what I mean? But I have lots of heroes. I interviewed 3 men who walked on the moon, and I put them in interviews in this book.
Okay.
And I interviewed them.
What's the title of that? The Dark Side of the Moon.
Okay. Yeah, and I have heroes, and I've met a lot of my heroes, and I'm really pleased about that. I'm not all gushing and everything over them, but I think these people. I mean, I think it's quite impressive that if you're a man who's walked on the moon, don't you? There's only 12 people done that, and I've spoken to 3 of them. I could have spoken to another, but I didn't follow it through, and I think that's quite impressive. You know, I mean, people. I know people who are authors have spoken to all of the men who walked on the moon, but I spoke to 3 of them. I think that's quite impressive, you know. But I
Well,
have heroes.
you know, one of the most interesting conversations I had a couple years ago, and it was just slightly before his death. It was a gentleman that was in World War II, but he didn't go overseas. He stayed in California the whole time, and he was a sharpshooter, and he would train people how to shoot better, our troops before they deployed. So an essential part of the war, but he stayed in the States for the whole war, you know. Um,
He was
uh,
lucky.
and when I talked to him, Glenn, he was 101 years old.
Wow.
And
Wow.
he still called the Japanese Japs, and I didn't even blink an eye at that. It's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
that's your generation. That's just, when
Yeah.
you grew up, and I
Yeah.
don't really think that you can fully embrace a time in history unless you live through it. And then, even then, if you're not paying attention, you may miss a lot of it.
Well, one of my sadnesses is that my dad died in 1981 when he was 56. I'm older than my dad was now,
Mhm.
and he would, like all veterans, it's probably a cliche, but it's true. They never mention it, do they? They never mention what happened. They might do an overview. I was here, I was there, but they never tell you the nitty gritty. And one of my sadnesses is that I never got to see my dad when he was maybe older and a
Yeah,
bit more mellow and all that kind of thing. I
a
mean,
little
he
bit
wasn't
more,
strung. He wasn't strung out or anything, but he wasn't open with it.
a little
And
bit more reflective, right? A lot of
yeah,
military people are like that. They're kind of close, shut about what they talk about. Those
yeah.
times they
So it
don't
would,
really want to remember that time too
because I
much.
think one of the best things I've ever seen is Spielberg's Band of Brothers. But the best part was when he interviewed the real people on it. That's the most interesting part.
Mhm.
And I'm glad he did that, and I'm glad they opened up to him because they were all in their 80s and 90s then. I think they're all gone now. But I never got that chance with my dad, and it's one of my sadnesses that I never got the chance. I'm not saying he would have done, but just the chance of him being older, maybe a bit further away from it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and I wanted to do the same with Helen's dad. Helen's dad only died a couple of years ago. He was 100, and he served in the Royal Navy. And he told me a couple of stories, but I wanted to interview him like Spielberg did. I wanted to get him on film. I wanted to write a book about it, but he wouldn't do it. And you have to respect that. And but I could have made him live forever, filming him about his experiences and writing a book about it. Because
yeah.
I was going to give it to I was going to produce a film about it if he would have done it, and I was going to offer it to the British War Museum, and I bet they'd have taken it because, well, he was there. He
Right,
was he was
right.
he was in the Royal Navy, so he was on the flagship, the HMS Duke of York. He told me one story. He worked. He was an engineer. He worked down in the engine room,
Hmm.
he was doing the Baltic run from Finland into the North Atlantic, guarding ships coming from America with
Very, very
all the
cold water,
yeah,
Atlantic
yeah.
waters. Yeah.
And he was allowed out. They were locked down for days. If a
Hmm.
torpedo came in, they were done. They
Hmm.
were locked down. Anyway, he said he was up on deck one night having a cigarette with a few of his colleagues. They were sort of let out, and it was a moonlit night. Sea was dead calm, and there was a ship the same size as his ship. That's relevant. About a quarter of a mile away, he could just see the shadow of. He could see the shadow of all the ships,
Hmm.
and it blew up. It suddenly just blew up, and it rolled over, and it was gone in 40 seconds. He said,
Yeah.
800 men on it, gone. And he said after 40 seconds or a minute, you wouldn't even know it was there. The smoke had drifted away. It was flat. And the reason I mentioned the size of it was because I don't know. We will never know. But that ship, Gordon said to me that it was the same kind of ship as the HMS Duke of York. Now, the Duke of York was the flagship of the Royal Navy, and the U-boats were after the Duke of York. And I think, just my opinion, that the U-boat commander thought that that was the Duke of York.
Mistaken identity.
Yeah, fired
Wrong
his torpedoes and got the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that could have been.
I mean, in the early days of the war, the U-boats made all the difference for Germany. You know, in the oceans, they were sinking a lot of cargo, a lot of warships.
But what they don't do, you see, when they fire the torpedoes, they don't hang about because the destroyers will come and drop depth charges on them, so they get the hell out of there. So he probably didn't. He probably would learn later, that U-boat commander, that if that's what he thought, it wasn't the Duke of York, you know. But just fantastic stories, just fascinating stories, and I just it's just a sadness for me that two people in my life I could have done a really good documentary on, and it didn't happen. So.
Well, I mean, rarely we appreciate things, you know, at the time, fully appreciate, you know. I mean, we just don't have the foreknowledge. I mean, I never knew. I knew that my grandfather was in World War II. He was an electrician afterwards, you know, wired a lot of the things around, a lot of the older buildings around here in town, you know. Had a good job as an electrician, may have done some of that in the service, I don't know. And my uncles, like one uncle was in Vietnam, and I knew that because he was the youngest, you know, of my mother's brothers. And another one I never even knew. I'd say till, you know, shortly before his death. I said, why have you got Korean tags on your? And I didn't even know that he was eligible for Korea and Vietnam. And they said because they were out of Vietnam tags, and apparently he joined the Navy in '56 and was eligible for the Korean Wars. And I did not know that, but so apparently he was in the Korean, you know, but was eligible also for Vietnam. So I don't know. And there's a lot that I would have liked to go back and just ask them, you know, and talk to them about. But
I think one of the most incredible things about my dad is that he was 19 when he jumped out of that plane. I can't imagine me being 19.
Yeah, the gentleman I talked about that broke his neck his parachute got in the slipstream of the bomber, and it broke his neck on descent. And like you said, they're down on the ground in like 8 seconds. It doesn't take long, but he didn't have the use of his legs. He did have the use of his arms, and that's why they just didn't outright. Well, he's useless. Let's kill him. You know, you know, the soldiers. But he survived. You know, and when recovered, he wasn't in a wheelchair later in life, and I knew him when he was in his 80s. You know, years ago. He's probably passed away by now, but it moved him emotionally to tell that story to the prisoners. You know, we would have to do a little talk, and they would everyone would want him every time to do the talk. I heard him do it about 3 or 4 times. The last time he said he was in tears, and it was just too emotional for him.
Well, it's the way it compounds itself. Is like my dad was jumping out of a C-47 with all his kit on, all his helmet on, and all the stuff like the other guys. 8 seconds later, he was on the ground, but he wasn't on the ground. He was in a flooded field, so he nearly drowned because he went down with all his equipment, and the canopy fell on the water.
Yeah.
He managed to get his knife out and cut the rises and then cut the canopy. So he's wet through. He's just jumped 500 feet in 8 seconds, being shot at, planes blowing up everywhere, all this going on, and he lands in a cold flooded field at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know. But he managed to get out, but he was just wet through because all his troop laughed at him because they couldn't. What are you doing? You know, why are you wet through? And he landed in a flooded field.
Yeah, if you dry, you weigh 80 pounds, and you get wet, it's going to be even more.
Yeah,
so,
that's right. But what happened was that Rommel knew that the paratroopers were coming, and he ordered the fields flooded. So it was Rommel's fault that my dad nearly drowned.
Wow.
But he got out.
Rommel was pretty sharp tactician, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
They called him the Desert Fox.
Yeah. He was a good soldier.
Mm-hmm. James Mason played him one time.
Yes, that's right, yeah. He committed suicide, and they said to him, if you don't commit suicide, we'll kill you, and we'll kill your family. So he So he did. He killed himself, and they left
I
his family
guess
alone.
Germany was a little like Stalin. They killed, you know, for they killed
Failure.
some of their most brilliant people, didn't
Yeah,
they?
for failure. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for failure or just for woo, this person's a threat or a
yeah,
perceived threat, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
just to
sometimes they killed them because it was their fault.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Somebody's got to be
not
the
good.
fall guy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
not good.
yeah. So how things been going for you recently?
Um, okay, I can't really complain. It's just there's a lot of things going on. Um, a few people have passed away and all this kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's coming to terms with all that. And you get as you get older, I think you get a more clearer view of life. I think, and you realize that you should be grateful for every second, and it's all a cliche and all that kind of thing, but it's true.
Right.
But people, what I'm trying to do now, and what Helen's trying to do to an extent, is to distance ourselves from most people we know, because we're just sick of dramas coming through the door, and all this kind of thing. We've got enough problems as it is. We don't bother anybody, so I think
Yeah.
we're getting to be a bit reclusive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. I don't see much of my family anymore. It's all very sad. My brother died a couple of years ago. I was really close to him, and since then, people, I don't know, people
Was he
drift away.
older or younger?
Older.
Older. Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of looked up to him.
Not so much as he was just my mate. He was just.
Yeah.
I have another older brother as well, but I've not spoken to him for a while. In fact, I've not spoken to him since Martin's funeral. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's all very sad, really, but what can you do? You know.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, you see, I'm not the kind of person who chases people. If people don't want to know me, then I'm gone.
Right.
I don't chase after people.
Right. Well, I'm starting to get excited. We're winding down the Devil Flyer campaign, and I'm starting to get excited and been on Elsie's ass to get things scanned, and with a project that I assume that you still want to do with us, which
Yeah,
is the
yeah,
John Buscema book, and
yeah.
so we'll be talking to you pretty soon over that. I'm shooting for July for filming on everything on the campaign. I hope I meet that mark. I'm certainly going to do everything I can. But in the meantime, I'm hoping to do a second book this year. I don't know how long it will take you to design part of it, or at least enough to put up on a crowdfunder. And I think that we'll probably do it on all three, maybe four different sites. Maybe
Mhm.
we'll certainly go with Fund My Comic exclusively first, but
Yeah.
we've got to talk about it. But a lot of details to work out. But I'm and I probably should have done that before Devil Flyer. But it's
Well, it is
just
what it is. It's you do what you
well,
do.
it's just like that never really entered in my mind, to do a book on John Buscema, till I actually bought the original artwork and stuff. And then it's like, hey, we could make a book out of this one day. But I mean, for me, it's always been about my characters, my universe, and doing comics, and
Yeah,
this is kind of a book on the artwork of a certain comic legend, which
yeah,
I had not considered just till a few years ago about doing, so my passion's still with what my babies, that I've created, and the stories that I want to tell. But I do think, need to pivot and do something different, and just for the money's sake, I think there's a lot of interest in that. And then also, share unpublished work with the world,
yeah,
that I think would really appreciate it.
yeah. It'd be good project to work on. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So he's in the last few months gathered up all his stuff, and still, like me, occasionally finds the odd piece or something stowed away. But I said, well, look under every crook and nook and cranny, and let's get everything we can, and so pretty soon either I'm gonna go over there, or he's gonna bring it over here, or whatever, and or he's gonna get it scanned there and get you what his part of it, which is quite significant. And we are concentrating on like the non-published stuff like we talked about before. So it'll be a pretty hefty book. I don't know how big it'll be, but and if that works out good, we may do a second book, like you said, or pivot and do the Jack Adlers or something else,
Yeah, could do a series. Yeah.
Have you seen his on this show? Have you seen his backpack that he's got?
No.
It is a backpack that was owned by a gentleman. Of course, he bought it on eBay, but that's where he got his Kirby oil painting from and other great stuff, and I have too. That's where we got all the Buscema stuff over the years. Might have been 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, but that's where we initially bought it. He's got a backpack, and you take the flap up, and on the flap it tells the different concerts that they went to starting in 1967, and one of them's Woodstock. And at Woodstock, while they were in line getting ready to go in, R. Crumb was behind the man and drew his Mr. Natural on there and signed it. Is that not wild?
That's brilliant. That must be worth a few quid.
Yeah. It's amazing. Something like that should be in a museum somewhere. And certainly a lot of the production artwork that I bought has actually been bought by other people on eBay. I bought it on eBay, put it up for sale for a higher price on eBay, and sold it. And it's went to a couple comic book museums, one of them out in California. I'm not sure where the other one is. So some of that stuff that I've actually owned has wound up in museums devoted to comic and sequential artwork. So that's kind of gratifying, that it can be shared out with the greater appreciation of the public. Because it's a unique art form, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It's the best art. It's the best storytelling medium, I think.
I kind of say that I finally distilled it down in my thoughts, is that the art will grab you, the story will keep you.
Yeah.
If it's a well done story. Because I knew initially I needed that visual, and for me, it was like George Perez, that just when I really started becoming a collector and knew that these things came out every month. I didn't even know. I would just read them, and for the joy of it, and it would say next issue, and it would never click that there would be a next issue or how I would get a next issue. It just didn't click with me.
Well, when I was 15, I was about to leave school, and we went to see this guy that was called the careers officer. And what you did, I went along with my mum to discuss what I wanted to do when I left school. And he asked me what I wanted to do, and I said to him, I want to draw comics. And he looked at me and he's puzzled, and he said, nobody draws comics. And I thought, well, I've got 600 American comics under my bed at home. Somebody's drawn them, and there's British comics as well. Anyway, and he said to me, had I thought about being a mechanic? And I said, no, I've not thought about being a mechanic. So I left school and bummed around, and then realized I can't do this. So I went to art college and then got a job in graphics.
Yeah.
But I was only out of college 3 years, and I was studio manager. So in charge of 7 guys. So,
and was that more a management job? Was it diverse as well as your kind of, I mean, you personally did stuff yourself, didn't you? You weren't just somebody that
gave the workout. Yeah.
I
had at one point. At one point, I was in charge of 7 artists, giving them work and going over their work with them. And I also worked on 3 drawing boards myself, doing stuff.
Okay.
I'd be drawing, I'd be doing typesetting, I'd be doing all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I think to leaving college, it's a short time to be studio manager. So then I had my own studio for a while, and I've done all right. I've done very well. I think I've enjoyed it, and had downs, of course, but on the whole, I can't complain about my
Yeah, I
career.
couldn't see you just sitting back and delegating, although that's an art all in itself. You
Well,
probably,
I had to do that as well.
yeah,
So, but
yeah.
I like to be busy, and like I said, I like challenges. Um, but I like drawing. I just like drawing. That's why I like pencils and paper. I just like drawing.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say comics have changed your life?
7.5.
Yeah, that's pretty good writing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I like Da Vinci and Michelangelo and
Hmm.
Canaletto and all these kind of people. They're all stunning artists. Um, I think everything influences everything influences everything else. You're influenced even by your sleeping moments. With
Yeah.
world events and stuff
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
We all
Yeah.
influence each other. We should all grasp knowledge and experience what we can, um, and live. I just want to live. I want to live for 10 million years. And
Yeah.
if I'm not around, maybe my artwork will be.
Well, it sounds like you've got a love for this ancient earth.
Yeah, I think that let's say let me give a controversial stance. I think that the pyramids might be 1 million years old.
Hmm.
I don't think the Egyptians built them. I think they were there when they arrived from wherever
Or
they came from.
aliens.
Uh, yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
So built by man,
I,
ancient man? What?
no, well, you said about ancient technology. I think that the pyramids were made by moving those stones around. They weigh 2.5 tons each, and they fit perfectly. I
Hmm.
think they were moved by sound.
Yeah. Vibrational.
Oscillating sound creates
Hmm.
zero gravity, and I think they were literally just pushed along. I
Hmm.
don't think they were. Well, I won't accept that they were dragged along logs and all that kind of thing. It's ridiculous because I don't know whether people know this, or many people know this, but those rocks were actually cut 400 miles away at a quarry.
Right. Yeah.
So how did they get that far? Did they put them on a boat? I can't imagine a wooden boat from the technology we supposedly think they had carrying 2.5 million rocks at 2.5 tons each, 400 miles to be built into a pyramid. And let's not forget there are actually 3 pyramids in the Giza pyramids. So they did all that 3 times. No.
I'll give you another one. One on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think man is rated since the very beginning of time?
What do you mean rated?
Have we gleaned? I mean, have we reached our potential? I mean, have we done a good job of it? I guess I'm asking. You think, in your
I think
estimation?
I think for the most part we've done a good job. Yeah, because we're still here.
Yeah, we haven't blown ourselves up yet.
Yeah, just
Although in the missile crisis, we came close, right?
well, we probably come close on other occasions, but we didn't.
Right.
But let me just go back to the pyramids. I worked it out. They tried to. They said that the Great Pyramid of Khufu, the big one, which
Hmm.
isn't bigger actually. It's just on a higher plane. 2.5 billion stones, all cut so precisely. Forget the chambers inside. Well, because forget
Right.
that bit. 2.5
Right.
million rocks in a big pyramid thing. And they said they were built over 30 years. But now they've decided they were built over 20 years, which makes it more difficult. But I worked it out somewhere that it's something like they were laying 230 of those stones every hour.
Wow.
That's pretty
Yeah.
good for dragging it up an incline on logs, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Precisely put together. So just look at it. Just use your eyes, folks, and you'll see it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's other pyramids out in the desert as well that they don't talk about. So they were busy, those guys, weren't they?
Well, eighth wonders of the world. I mean, I guess it's the
Yeah.
only one that remains, right, from the ancient times that they say.
Well, it's not sure how all the Moai are and Easter Island or Stonehenge gets replaced every 5 years from being 150,000 years old to 4,000. It's just
Glenn, you said you've read maybe 900 books in your lifetime, whatever. I don't know.
700, yeah, 700.
700. Okay, I
Yeah.
was, um, do you do audio at all?
Sometimes when I'm working, yeah.
Hmm.
I
My
started
mind
reading.
seems to wander though. Sometimes I have to back it up because I
Yeah,
wonder. I
well,
get
yeah,
off
yeah,
task.
yeah, yeah. We all do that. We all do that. But
Hmm.
I started reading obviously when I was a kid. I wrote my first book when I was 9, 8, and that was 20 pages in an exercise book. 20 pages for an 8-year-old isn't bad, is it? And it was about Stingray, Jerry Anderson Stingray, you know, the puppet show. It was
Hmm.
about that, and I was reading the first novel I read was The Finger in the Sky Affair, The Man from Uncle, 1964. That was the
Hmm.
first novel I read. And then by age 13, I was reading Isaac Asimov and Bradbury and Philip Dick and those people. So read, folks, read.
Yeah. Well,
It's the
comics
best
made
thing.
me a reader. I needed that visual stimulus, but you kind
Yeah.
of going a little deeper with it without any
Well, I was
really,
still reading comics at the same time as that,
uh-huh.
as reading Kirby and all that kind of stuff. Um, I consider myself very, very lucky in my life to have had the best music, the best reading, the best film, everything that
Well,
in my opinion.
I said that at a very young age because I don't know, Glenn. I've had more of a mature mind. Even when I was younger, it was like would say things. I remember when I was very young to my grandmother. I said, "I think I'm living in the best of times," and I said, "With TV and radio and blah 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 blah," and my grandmother said, "Well, I feel like I was in the
Yeah,
best of times because we got cars for the first time or radio or
yeah,
TV and all that was developed during my time. So I guess it's a matter of perspective."
yeah. Everybody thinks they're living the best time and they're all right.
Hmm.
You know, like
Yeah.
everybody thinks they've got the best dog and they're all right.
Yeah.
They're all
Yeah.
correct. They've all got the
Yeah.
best dog.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I hope all dogs do go to heaven because I've got a good one right now.
Well, I've got a few up there, you know, and I'm convinced that if there's a heaven, they'll be there, and if they're not, well, there's something wrong
Yeah. Yeah.
because dogs are brilliant.
Well, I mean, they're loyal to a fault, aren't they? There's probably
Yeah,
when it comes to a domesticated animal, there's probably
yeah.
one that's not you can't find a more loyal
No, they're
animal than a
man's
dog,
best
right?
friend, aren't they? Man's best friend. So
Yeah.
you know,
Ronald Reagan actually played a lawyer in a Western in the early 60s, and I have that on disc. I forget. He used to, narrate, and set up the stories, and then they go into the story, or then after the story was told, he would come on and he would sort of summarize things, right? And so occasionally he would play one of the characters in there. And this was a lawyer soon to be senator later in his life, and he went into court. This guy had, you know, obviously the dog and had ran on the guy's property, and he'd said, "I don't want your dog on my property." Well, he shot the dog, and it was just a
ugh,
mutt, but it was. He went to court and was suing him for $500, and back then it was a lot of money. five hundred
yeah,
dollars That was a fortune. But he said, "You're lucky we're not suing you for $5,000." And he gave a great historical oratory about the loyalty of a dog, you know, that you can be dying or shivering and cold, and he'll, it's heart wrenching, and they won the case. It was
well,
just,
good,
yeah,
yeah,
he proved, this, it might have been a mutt to you and me, but that was his only friend. They're isolated in the country here. That was
hmm
his only day-to-day friend. And he made everybody see the value of a little dog, as a friend.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I agree. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
Dogs are great.
yeah, I mean, I like cats, and but they're just not the same as a dog.
Cats just want you to stroke them and feed them. Dogs want to be with you, don't they?
Yeah,
You kick a dog, and he'll come back and apologize.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Not
I
that
mean,
I've ever
there's
kicked a dog.
there's that great there's those great movies where Clint Eastwood spits his tobacco on the dog, and the dog
Yeah,
keeps coming back, and you're wondering why You know, it's about like a battered housewife. Why does it keep coming back?
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are great.
Now, are you a big Western fan? The genre, you know, the West?
Not
No,
really, but
not really.
the best cowboy film I've seen is The Outlaw Josie Wales. I like
Yeah,
that one.
yeah.
I like Clint Eastwood in those films,
Hmm.
but I'm not a big fan of that type of thing.
Yeah,
John Wayne just leaves me cold.
yeah,
I just don't know what it is about him, how he got that famous.
yeah. So
He's
you
just
kind of first you kind of like the grittiness and of because I mean they're not as clean shaven as you know America made movies. They're gritty, right? I mean their faces are landscapes, and
I think that's what that happened with the 60s and 70s films. That grittiness
mhm,
came in, didn't it, with Clint
yeah.
Eastwood and Bonnie and Clyde and that kind of thing.
Well, I
Um,
think you're right. You know, you were talking about I grew up during the best times in the 60s was a big part of that in your life and I think, you know, and I was born in the mid 60s. So, and but I again, I've got this sharp memory where I remember going out to California in 69. I was only like 3.5 years old, but it was a big trip and it was very memorable. And I just amazed, you know, my mother to this day with what I can remember, you know, of things that we did out there, you know.
yeah,
And they might not have been epic things. It was like when I was on the plane, I was amazed, you know, we got to see cartoons and movies and stuff then. And that was when, you know, they had so many rows and stuff. It was a big thing. Now it's more streamlined, right? But
yeah,
it was a big deal back then, you know.
yeah.
And I remember one of the co-pilots or pilots come out and gave me the little wings. You know, they do that to the little tots, right? And I remember that. And I left my troll doll. Trolls were, you know, the big
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
out, you know,
yeah.
then. And I left my troll doll and I cried. And my mother got me another one while I was out there in California. And ice cream truck, you know, you get an ice cream for, you know, come around with the music. We didn't have that where I live. And you could get an ice cream for a dime, you know. I
Well,
remember my uncle was on the beach. He was in the Navy, and I couldn't get it up into their place. They had like this cinder block, you know, for their step to get up in there, and he would have to lift me up every time because I was so small to get into the place. And they didn't have chairs; they had bean bags, and in the doorways they had the beads, you know, of the '60s. You know, yeah, I remember all that. You know, it was a
well,
great time.
yeah.
You know, and it really made an impression on me. You know, I of course by then TV kind of set me up to want to go to California because I watched the Monkeys and that was all set out in California. I
I
watched other shows like Beverly Hillbillies that was set out in California. And
I saw the Monkeys. I saw the
you did?
Monkeys. Yeah,
Hmm.
not in concert. You know when Mickey Dolenz was going out with Samantha Just?
Okay.
Well, she used to live literally 200 yards from me,
Wow.
and I
Okay.
saw them. There's a little lake near where I used to live and where they live, and I was just there with my friends at the lake, and there's all this commotion, and we looked round at Samantha. We knew Samantha Just was and that she was going out with Mickey Dolenz, and they all fell out and got in the car and sped off. So that's my claim to fame. I've seen the Monkeys,
And
but
Mickey's
not
the only
singing.
one surviving now.
That's
He's
right.
the
Yeah,
oldest
yeah,
living monkey. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, I mean, you've been around to see so many different things, you know, which are become historical. It's kind of gratifying when somebody can see the impact of their work, right,
Hmm.
within their lifetime. Do you think Jack Kirby got to see a little bit of that, his
Oh yeah,
legacy?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, he did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, obviously not these big blockbusting films now, but
How do you
yeah,
think he kind of put it in perspective for his own life success in his own right? You know.
I think he was very grateful for it. I think he was good at what he did. He knew he was good,
Hmm.
and without being big-headed,
Yeah.
and he did a lot of work, and he earned a lot of money. People think he was starving, but he wasn't. And I read somewhere that he and Joe Simon, just before 1941, when they created Captain America, they were splitting $500 a week. So $250 a week in 1941 was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So he was never a poor man. He just didn't get what he should have got. Like the
Yeah.
Beatles, they weren't poor by any means.
Would you
Well, they
characterize
didn't.
him as an old American term here, a hustler? He hustled
No,
for
no, no,
his
no,
work?
no, 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 no,
No?
no. I wouldn't say it was. No, I think if he'd have hustled, he'd have got a bit more. I think he was just happy to draw. I don't. I think he was. I don't think he was a good businessman by any means. But
Yeah.
that was the name of the game then. I think that he was fortunate that he could draw so fast because he was doing 4 and 5 pages a day when other people were doing maybe 2. So he was always a big earner. I read somewhere, I think it was in Comics Journal, that when he did Sky Masters for 18 months, he did that when he'd finished his day work. So, and he got something. There was some tax thing released, and he was paid for the first year of that. I think he got $8,000. This is 1959 for a year's work, so it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that was his day job. His day job was drawing Challengers of the Unknown for DC. So he was earning a lot of money. He was just very fortunate that he had such fantastic genius of ideas and that he could draw so quickly. Because again, you see, nobody was telling him what to draw. You know, whoever claims that, they weren't telling him what to draw.
Right.
He did it all himself, which is what he says in his interviews, that he wrote the stories. Other people put the
Basically,
words on.
they talked over a loose plot, right?
No, nobody gave him a plot. He just sat there and drew them. Nobody gave him a plot.
Okay.
They might have done on some occasions, but for the most of it, he just drew what he wanted to draw.
I mean, that's what they say the Stan Lee method was, right?
Well, the Stan Lee method is a myth. That makes it sound like Stan Lee thought of doing it that way, and that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that Stan Lee. The only thing Stan Lee ever said to Jack Kirby was, "Have them meet God," and then Jack Kirby came back with Galactus and the Silver Surfer.
Mm-hmm.
Stan Lee was a great wordsmith. The words he put down were great. Stan Lee was a good salesman. He didn't, and he says it in one of his interviews in 1965. He doesn't give Steve Ditko or Jack Kirby a plot. He just lets them get on with it. There you go.
Do you think things kind of sort of generational? They kind of go around in cycles. They say that there was a great generation and it comes around about every 90 years. Another.
Oh, yeah, I can believe that. Yeah. Well, we have the great generation of the World War II, don't we? We have the veterans. We have that. That's
right. And Kirby would have been in along with a lot of the other, Kanigher and a lot of others served, and some of them didn't come back.
Well, there was one guy, I can't remember his name, but if you read Jim Steranko's History of Comics, there's a guy who was supposedly, we'll never know, will we, because he was only 26 when he died, faster than Kirby and better than Kirby. I can't remember his name, but he was in the Air Force in the war, and he bailed out and a Japanese pilot shot him in his parachute coming down.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's Joe Maneely, who died on the railway station, didn't he? Fell in front of the train. He was faster than Kirby. I don't know whether he's a better artist. That's subjective, but there were lots of people who did make it. It's like sports people.
Now he kind of had to pivot with the times, right? I mean, they kind of came up. He and Joe Simon, you talked about his sort of business partner, right? They came up with the romance comic in 47.
Exactly. When Kirby came back from the war, having seen the horrors of that and taken part in it, he didn't do a war comic until the mid-50s, and he and Joe Simon created the romance books, which couldn't be any more opposite, could they?
Right.
So, and Ross told me that Jack used to have nightmares for 10 years after he got back. So,
I don't have it in here, but I don't know if I've ever shown you my Joe Simon. He drew a little Sandman type character on a letter.
I think you showed me that.
Yeah.
You showed me that. Yeah.
Personalized. I think that was Sal Buscema, John Buscema, and Mort not Mort Weisinger. Oh gosh, the creator of Pillsbury Doughboy and Alan Scott, the Green Lantern. Can't think of his name right now, but uh, think I think he was the art dealer of all them, and that's like a personalized letter with him from '95 with the like what looks like the old Sandman character that they kind of came up with, the purple and yellow uniform, and he had a sidekick. Sidekicks were all the thing, right? I guess that started with Robin, maybe sidekick.
I don't know. But I would imagine before that, because the reason they have a sidekick is so they can tell somebody what they're doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's what that's all about. But I just think Kirby, well, he was the best, wasn't he? He did all the different genres. He did most work. He did the most pages, and now he's making somebody else the most money from his ideas.
Yeah.
So. But I think it's it's criminal again that nobody knows who Jack Kirby was outside.
Yeah, well, I mean, when Stan Lee passed away, I said, "Well, you wait and see. When Steve Ditko passes away, there'll be silence. Nobody even know about it."
Yep, that's right.
Which is sad, because he was a recluse anyway. But in his former years, but. He did a lot of work through Charlton, some of his best work, and I think one of the things that Ditko said is like, I'll let my work speak for itself, And
well, you see, if you want any more, it's an old story, and I don't really like getting into it, but I'll just say this. Stan Lee said that he hadn't spoken to Steve Ditko for 2 years. So how did he get him a plot to do the Spider-Man?
Yeah.
So there you go. There it is. He said in an interview he didn't need to give Kirby or Ditko a plot, and then he's not spoken to Steve for 2 years. So how's he telling people what to do?
Well, I've really got a love for Fantastic Four number 13, which is Jack Kirby, inked by Steve Ditko, and the only issue that he inked. Now he inked the cover to the next issue 14, but that was the only time that he inked, at least that I know of. Maybe in the 80s, maybe probably not. I mean, I know a lot of the early pre-Fantastic Four number stuff, the Atlas Monster stuff, they were teamed up a lot. But I wish, if I had a wish, that there would have been more Steve Ditko inked Jack Kirby Fantastic Four issues, because that's just brilliant.
Well, if I had that same wish, I would like to get Joe Sinnott to ink everything that Jack Kirby did.
Yeah. Well, he did issue 5, and then nothing till about issue 40 something.
45.
It's amazing.
40 issues. Yeah. That's nearly 4 years, isn't it?
Yeah. Amazing that he did the first appearance of Dr. Doom, which I think is except for number 13, it's probably the nicest inked. That's where they do the time travel story, and the thing is Blackbeard back in history, and it just stands out, because I don't think Kirby got some of the greatest, and we were talking about Conan and John Buscema. I really don't think even on the magazines like Savage Sword of Conan or some of the other stuff he was in, that they got top-notch inkers. Now, with that said, there was Ernie Chan and some others but a lot of times, like the Avengers and stuff, it was just rushed. There was certainly
George Lucas,
there was.
I think with Kirby, I think he started to develop when he started his science fiction in the FF early 30s. I think Behold a Distant Star, that kind of thing. Because if you look at the early FF, it's just the overspill from the monster books, isn't it? Mostly, and then he sort of gets a freer reign, and he gets more science fiction. Because I was never a big fan of Thor, but when he moved into Tarnan Isle and all that stuff, that science fiction Galactus stuff, when Thor went to find out where Galactus was from and all that, that was just pure science fiction. That could have been you and I in that situation. It just happened to be Thor, you know.
Mhm.
And another thing on the New Gods thing that Kirby did in the '70s, early '70s, the way if you read them, the way he's moving Superman into it is incredible. Superman's doubting himself
Mhm.
because he's seen these gods, you know, and he's moved the way he was moving that is amazing. But they stopped him, didn't they? So
Did you talk to? Did it ever come up when you met them that because in the early days, like at DC with Challenges Unknown, I know Roz inked Kirby.
yeah,
Did you ever talk about that to them or how
yeah,
that came about?
she did, and she told me I couldn't tell anyone.
Okay.
So there you go. That's the end
Okay.
of that.
Okay.
It's not in my book. I know what went down. She told me, but she said I mustn't tell anybody, so I won't.
Okay. Well,
I've not.
I just imagined that it was like to get things out and get things out on time, you know. But
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Did you like her inks on the old Challenger stuff and the
I did.
when
Yeah,
you
it was good. Yeah, she's
filled
good.
in and did that? Yeah.
Yeah, she's good.
Yeah.
She's a very artistic person. She was a seamstress, wasn't she, as a job? So she had that eye, and
Hmm.
she could obviously. I never saw any of her drawings or anything, but I've seen the inking, and she told me some of the issues she inked on it, and it was just great.
A lot of people, you know, after the significant other passed away, might just okay, I'm done with that part of my life. But she really went to some conventions afterwards and was
Yeah,
fully embraced
yeah.
happily by the community. And do you think in her mind that was a way of carrying on her husband's legacy?
Of course, yeah. And also, Marvel, it must be said, gave her a pension, didn't they?
Hmm.
You know, they gave her some money, which was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think she was carrying on. I mean, there's that saying, isn't there? Behind every great man is a woman,
Yeah.
and it's true. It's true, and that was her. And I've also in my book, there's also a drawing I did for them, a cartoon I did for them, and it's exactly that. Behind every great man is a woman, and they're both in it, and it's in the book. And another thrill of mine was that I went to see him in October 1988 and gave him this drawing and gave it to Roz, and they all thought it was great. And then 3 years later, when I went back, that drawing was on the mantelpiece in his studio. So I don't know whether it was there all the time, but she certainly knew it was me coming back, and she
Hmm.
had that picture, and it's there. It's there when you watch the film. You can see it on the mantelpiece there
How
because
would
I
you
met.
characterize their family? Sort of upper middle class or what?
Yeah, I'd say so. Upper middle class. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I'd never met any of the kids or anything, but
What amazes me is when they were in New York. I know, you know, Marv Wolfman, a great writer in his own right, and one of my favorites, still alive, and uh, Lynn Wein. They talk about going to see Kirby at his house in New
yeah,
York when they were like 10 years old, kids, and then later when he moved out to the West Coast, it was younger creators like Steve Rude that
mhm,
went, you know, who's in his, I guess he's about 70 something now, you know,
yeah,
but when he was a younger kid
yeah.
out on the West Coast. So it was like a generational thing. He had different generational, it was around long enough to, you know, see, you know, that
Well,
must
they're
have been
very
satisfying to say, oh, they went into comics, you know.
well. I never thought this, and I'm sure it's true. I never thought that I was the only person who rocked up at his house to talk to him. I think people were going there every week, if not every
Hmm.
day. They
Well,
just
it
turn
is
up,
kind
you
of
know.
like the holy Mecca spot, isn't it?
Yeah,
To go
yeah.
for comic book
I'll tell you
nerds.
what. I'll tell you what's interesting. I looked at his house on Google Maps, and it's blurred out. His house is blurred out.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know what's going on there, but probably nothing. But it's just strange. It's
So we've talked a lot about Kirby and a lot of other stuff, and I did want to make this primarily about your books, but
mhm.
now I've got, since before we close this little segment here, it's like how do where does Stan Lee sit with you then? I mean, in the annals of, okay, this is sort of his legacy. Where does he sit in your mind?
I think you have to look at a timeline from 1941 to say 1981. And Stan Lee was around. I'm not saying he didn't do anything, but he was around. And then for 25 years with nothing remarkable. And then in 1960, well, 20 years, and then early 60s, the FF broke and all that. Then he was around for 7 years. He was the biggest thing since sliced bread. And then when Ditko had left, Wally Wood had left, and then Kirby left, he didn't do anything after that.
He became editor-in-chief in the early 70s.
So he didn't create anything. He didn't do anything for 20 years. And there was this blast for 7 years, and then he didn't do anything after the blast. So when those guys were around, and then when they were, he didn't do anything with them to start with, and then they boom, and then when they left, he didn't do anything. So where were all those great ideas?
Yeah.
But with, I have great respect for Stan Lee. I think his words were great. I think he made the comics very enjoyable with his dialogue. And he was a great salesperson for Marvel Comics and himself. But I don't think he created much. And I'm being generous there. That's my opinion.
Marv says, don't forget the question to Glenn. Okay. Sarah Frazetta continued her grandfather's legacy. What about Jack's family? Are you doing the same?
I don't really know whether they are or not, because I think they've just, I don't know the ins and outs, but they did settle, didn't they, with Marvel a few years ago. I don't know how much they got. Not my business, but I don't know whether they do or not. I don't know whether they go to conventions or anything. I don't know anything about them.
I think the way I don't know if it's in. It seems like the artists are getting more recognition for their work. Like Schuster or with Superman, where they're actually mentioned in the credits now.
Well, they should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
They should be, and but credit tends to mean money, and people don't like giving the money away, do they? So I don't know. Yeah. I'm not privy to any of that, so I can't really comment. These are just my thoughts.
Well, it seems like, Glenn, that my perception, and this may be wrong. You'd have to study out the history, but it kind of a sweatshop mentality, sort of New York, whatever. Churn it out at $5 a page, whatever, because there was a boom right after Superman. There was a big boom, and the publishing's kind of like that anyway, with the pulps and everything. It's already like, right.
I think what happened was you had comics have been around. Well, Leonardo da Vinci's got the first comic strip, hasn't he? I've seen that in the Tate Museum in London. It's supposed to be the first comic strip, but that, to me, that means there must have been one before it, because nobody's ever first, if you know what I mean. But I think what happened in the world is that we had the film, and people used to go to the film for the entertainment, and then comic strips came along, basically for kids, I suppose. And then TV came along. I think TV is responsible for the decline in comics, or part of it, because and film was always there before the comic strips, and then that period from 1940 to 1960, when not many people had a TV, even in America, I don't think, and then all of a sudden TV came along, and now you've got those little phone things, haven't you? You've got the mother box, haven't you? Yeah. Everybody's got a mother box.
Well, all right. Let me instill a little bit of hope. Maybe dispel that a little bit, because I was rabid TV person, and actually, when I look at the history of it, I experienced Superman and Teen Titans and all those superheroes in the Filmation cartoons, and Space Ghost and Herculoids and all that, and Johnny Quest, of course, it was sort of a golden age renaissance, I think, you know, uh, during the 60s, animation. And I experienced all that long before I ever cracked a book. And I can remember even on that first Avengers cover, there was the Beast from behind on the Rich Buckler cover, and he looked like, he had the hair up
Yeah,
like this. It looked like Batman to me. So that tells me I knew who Batman was, even though I'd never bought a Batman book.
yeah,
Just like you can probably go around the world and say, do you know who Spider-Man was? And do you
yeah.
own a comic? I don't, but I know who he is.
Yes.
So,
It's
I
like
saw
everybody.
superheroes long before I read them.
It's like everybody knows who Elvis is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
I think this is why I think I was luckier than anybody else, like your grandma. I think she was, because when I was born, and when I was growing up, I had all the American comics, all the British comics. I had Jerry Anderson, Thunderbirds, and all that kind of stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
had The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, Star Trek. I had all those growing up.
Doctor
All
Who.
that Doctor Who, all that stuff sticking in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I had all that. I'm not the only one, obviously.
A
Doctor.
blender put it on parade.
Yeah, but there was just this, and it was the time of. I think it was a time of excellence. I look at the comics today, and they're
Yeah.
discussing what pizza they're going to have. Who cares? What is
Yeah.
that about?
The Doctor Who historicals kind of get a downbeat to it, as far as viewership and, when they came out. But I love the Aztecs with the first Doctor. And I like the historicals, even though that may be pure made up fiction. I like the
Well,
historicals
I watched the first
or the
Doctor Who
pseudo
broadcast,
historical.
so
Yeah.
which was delayed by the JFK assassination. Did you know that?
Yeah. I did know that. Yeah. And
So there's a
that's why
tie-in for me.
it makes me interested in it, that a lot of that was wiped and you got to see, and then of course back then they did a lot of live TV,
Yeah.
never to be seen again.
Well, they used to wipe the tapes, didn't they? They used to use the
Yeah, it
same
was
tape next
history.
week.
It was history right there. You were living it, and it was to be no more afterwards. You were either there or you weren't. It was
Well, there
like,
was a guy, wasn't there a guy probably 20 years ago now in Britain who had copied the first some episodes of Doctor Who that they wiped, and they paid him so they could complete their archive, the BBC.
yeah.
Something like that. So if he hadn't done that illegally, which I think it was, but they sort of let him off, because they didn't have a copy of it, and everybody was fine with it, So
Well, it's amazing, things repeat themselves. I remember, my brother had a recorder with a little mic, and I would put it up there against the TV, and I would Mork and Mindy on
yeah,
cassette,
yeah,
and people were doing that with Doctor Who in the 60s when the technology was even, down in Australia and different places of the world where it was broadcast. And that's why we have some of the have some of the better, mixes with the BBC archives, because they've got all the audio, but the visuals were often wiped. And, in the 70s, some of it was on the docket. The very first Dalek story, the very first Doctor Who story that was delayed, like you said, from the JFK assassination, they actually rebroadcast that the week later,
yeah,
because they felt like they didn't get a great hearing of that, a
yeah.
great viewing of that, because of everybody's going to be focused on the death of the presidency, right?
That's right.
That shook the world, and I
Yeah.
will never experience that because I was not born then.
Well,
You know,
you nearly experienced it last year.
yeah, some of the fallout of it, yeah.
No,
Oh,
with
oh,
Donald
you
Trump
mean?
being shot.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, and then yeah, there's, I mean, less public, because they didn't succeed. But the Reagan shooting,
yeah,
I remember that, watching that live and happening. I mean, there's something I remember. Both, I was fortunate enough. I was on a lunch break from work when the first space shuttle blew up, and I just happened to go to the bank to cash my check, and it was on TV, and I'm watching it just for the few brief moments I'm there in the bank, and then boom,
yeah,
and that's all I could talk about for the rest of the day. I remember 9/11. I had to be in court that day, all day long, and I had a friend that was in and out of the court, and he was coming back, and I was saying, "Well, what's going on?" Because we were stuck at court, and he was like, "Well, they just, a plane went down." In the field, and they just attacked the Pentagon, and it just kept escalating. And it's like,
Well,
wow.
I remember that day. It was a Tuesday, wasn't it? I remember I was at work, and a guy came in at lunchtime for us, and he said a plane's hit the World Trade Center. So we went into the director's room where there was a TV. We turned the TV on, and as we were talking, the other plane hit, and I said, "This is an attack."
Yeah, I did too at that point.
Right?
Yeah.
And then there was a woman there, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to Florida in the morning for a holiday." And I said, "You won't be going anywhere for weeks."
Ground.
And
yeah,
it was true. It's obvious to me, but
yeah. And I thought whoever planned that was pretty dense, because the next day or the next few days, I felt like if they would have just carried out small attacks, like small explosions, like under a car in a shopping mall or wherever around the United States, that would have sent us even into more panic. Thankfully, that wasn't.
I think the thing is, if they would have flown those planes in 2 hours later, 20,000 people would have been dead because the buildings would have been full.
Occupied,
but that's not the point of terrorism. The point of terrorism is to let you know that they can do this. That's the point of terrorism.
And there, for that first week, especially the first 3 days, you were kind of holding your breath to see if there's going to be any more.
Yeah,
unfortunately, there wasn't, but there was palpable fear. Yeah. I know, in my mind.
Well, that's what terrorism is. It doesn't matter how many people you kill; it's the threat that everybody thinks they can be got. And that's the way it works.
Yeah, and I mean the stock market just I mean, there for a week or so, it was just abysmal, because of the attack. Now the market does not like uncertainty.
That's right.
Yeah, it always crashes with uncertainty, and that's
they like to know what's going on.
Yeah, and that's why I hated Obama in office, because there was such uncertainty. The market didn't do well at all. I mean, and I think that was by design. It was just, he just never could, even with this birth certificate, whatever, what he presented as his birth certificate could have been faked, and there was no conclusive things. I just wish we could nail it down. I think that's what the American people want is, or any people for that matter, is that they want a little certainty, like it's almost like the children from Vietnam. They wouldn't go to sleep till they gave them a loaf of bread where they knew their next meal was coming from, and then they could sleep. But the kids would not sleep, otherwise.
I think obfuscation.
Yeah. I want to give you an opportunity, if you missed any of your books or publications, which they're all available from what I'm understanding on Amazon and other like Barnes and Noble, other outlets.
Yeah, you can get my Kirby book through, and my Manchester United book, which is that one. Those are published by New Haven Press, but they're also on Amazon. The best thing to do to get my work is to go to Amazon, or if you want Crikey issues, they're on eBay. But if you want them, you can get them direct from me as well. There's 15 of these, and there's also 15 issues of Comics Unlimited, which is 100 pages of articles and stuff.
Right.
You can get those on Amazon. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be publishing this again, so there's 15 issues of that. But it's all there.
Talking about combining the issues, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was thinking of putting them out on PDF to save all the printing and distribution. Because if you see, I made a mistake. When I first did my Jack Kirby book, I only made, when I did the crowdfunder, I only made it available from me, and the postage is the same as the book, and I think that killed it. I should have got in touch with somebody in the United States to take that side of it. So I messed up there. But
I think that's kind of the approach Randy and Russ has taken, right? They're printing in the UK and printing in the America.
They've done it the right way. Yeah, they've learned from my mistake, even though they didn't know my mistake.
And then there's, I guess they're printing down South America too, right? Some of that's been translated.
They're printing Brazil, and
in
they're
Brazil.
also in Europe as well.
Hmm.
Norway, Denmark, or somewhere
Hmm.
over there. So that'd be nice for them. Yeah.
I didn't ask that, but do you speak any other languages?
Only double Dutch.
Double Dutch.
Yeah.
No Pig Latin or anything?
No. I speak a bit of Spanish. I wouldn't starve in Spain or a Spanish-speaking country, but I wouldn't say I could speak Spanish at all.
Yeah.
No. And I know
Well,
the odd swear word in other languages like most people do.
to sum it up, what do you think is sort of like the the thing you get, the most gratifying thing you get out of your artwork? Is it just self-expression?
Yeah, it's people take this the wrong way, but I look at some of my work and I think, wow, did I do that?
Hmm.
Which doesn't mean it's any good. It just means I think it is. And I'm amazed that I've done it, because the longest distance is from your head to the end of your arm
Yeah.
for an artist.
And only you really know you're in that headspace.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
I can't believe, right? Listen, I can't believe that I have been to Dealey Plaza in Dallas where Kennedy was shot, interviewed people are there. I can't believe I've been there. I can't believe I've been to Rapa Nui, Easter Island. I can't believe I spoke with Jack Kirby. I can't believe I spoke with 3 people who walked on the moon. You know, that kind of Alan Shepard, Charlie Duke, and Gene Cernan. I can't believe I've done that. I find it difficult to look at myself and think, wow, you did that.
I think we're all unique individuals, and there's only going to be one you in all of history.
Yeah.
But now and certainly I think every individual is an influencer, but some more than others, right? I mean, uh, yeah, but you interact, when are you part of history, and when do you become history, a big part in history?
I think,
I guess only time will tell. It's kind of subjective, isn't it?
yeah,
Being,
I think most people uh, achieve fame after they're gone.
yeah.
But people like, I don't know, Paul McCartney become legends when they're 21.
I say get on with living, right? I mean,
Yeah,
most people are forgotten. That's
exactly.
just,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean, you couldn't name me 500 people probably throughout history, and that are really known by, most people.
And that's
It's,
why it's a shame that Jack Kirby isn't one of those people that's known.
and then you have to wonder, does it even really matter?
Well, nothing matters in the end, does it? Because we're all going to
Yeah.
turn to dust, aren't we? So,
Yeah.
but so what you have to do, you have to live, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who died at whatever age. My dad
Yeah.
died when he was 56.
Yeah.
I'm older than my dad was, and I find that incredible.
Or like in World War One or World War II,
Yeah,
but I mean World War One too. I think it was World War One was a focus on that they had a whole generation cut short
yeah.
because of the war.
The first
And they would have
mechanized war,
liked to had the life that you and I have been able to live
of course.
in
And then
peaceful time.
you got people in the Holocaust. You got people from 15,000 years ago who were massacred and all that kind of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
just live. If you want to go somewhere, they have these things called aeroplanes. Find a way. If you want to write a book, sit down and write a book. My nephew said to me a few years ago, he said to me, how do you write a book? I said, well, what you do is you try and get an original idea, which you probably can't these days, but so you do a variation on a theme. You
Mm-hmm.
sit down for 3 months and you write 80,000 words, which you hope makes sense. And he's never written a book. So
Yeah.
you just do what you do what you can in anything that you do, but do it well.
Yeah.
Don't have regrets about doing it, and don't hurt anybody while you're doing it.
You know what I regret is sitting around doing nothing and waiting for inspiration to hit.
Yeah.
I think inspiration comes in the act of doing.
It's a catch-22. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you get better, practice doesn't make perfect, because nothing's perfect, but the more you do it, the better you get.
Absolutely. At least you're sharpening your skills along the way, right?
Well, my dad said to me when I was younger, when I was about 19, I'd left college, I was looking for work in art and design. He said to me, when I finally got in a studio, which didn't take me a couple of months, he said to me, learn everything you can about your job. which is why I got back into lettering and inking and typesetting and printing and photography, all the whole thing. I'm not an expert at anything, but I think I can do you a good job. And I like to learn. I read, like I said. I just try and do things best as I can. I fail miserably most of the time, but I still try.
Out of your bulk of work, what do you think you're most proud of, or do you kind of view it that way?
It's difficult because I'm proud of this one because I wrote this about my dad's story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of this one because I went to the remotest place on Earth. I'm proud of this one because I talked to 3 people who walked on the moon. So I couldn't really say. It depends, and I'm proud that I got to meet Jack Kirby twice.
Now you travel to different places. Is there different, like when you said the most remotest area on the planet? Okay.
Yeah.
You go north, south, east, or west. What? It's like 800 miles in any direction, something like that.
What, Easter Island?
From Easter Island?
It's 2,500 miles from anywhere.
200,000 in any direction.
2,500, yeah.
Yeah.
Thereabouts, yeah.
And so does that have its own vibration to it? Does it have its own? I mean, if you go to a place, there's certain places that just have a certain feel. You know what I'm saying?
This is what I said before about Easter Island. It's a very strange place. It's very weird. It's a weird place. It's the weirdest place I've ever been. It's really? Very odd. Yeah. And I mean, I've been all over the United States. I've been over South America, and they're all, everywhere has a different vibe. Like I went to Texas. The first place I went in America was Texas. So I figured that all Americans would be like Texans. Well, they're not. Even when you go into Memphis and up that way and then into New York. New York is totally different from California.
Oh, absolutely.
And California is totally different from Texas. Texans think they're their own country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe they should be. I mean, the British Isles where I live, it fits in Texas. That's how big America is. But I'm fortunate enough to have been from both coasts of the United States and all in between, or most places in between, over periods of time. I got Greyhound buses and all this kind of thing. And every time I got off, I was amazed at how different people were. But they are here as well. But everywhere you go, people are usually great.
You go to Wales, or you go to Ireland, or you go to like Scotland. There's you all be part of British culture, but
they're all different, but they all hate the English. Because everybody does, but I don't care.
Well, bag of Europe,
My ancestors come from France through Belgium to Holland. So,
well, my ancestors, I just learned, about 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, from my sister, that we came out of England and settled in Maryland. And
but all your lot came from Europe, didn't they? Apart from the indigenous tribes. So you shouldn't be too surprised, should you?
I want to trace it back. My sisters made it very intriguing to me.
Yeah, but it can't be difficult, can it?
It's part of Maryland's flag, and I'm related to a signer of the Declaration of Independence and 2 presidents plus Frank and Jesse James. There's a story there somewhere.
Well, my claim to one of my claims to fame in America is that I played Clyde Barrow in a school play. So in Bonnie and Clyde. When I was at school, I was Clyde Barrow. So
the best I got to do was acting. Was the hunter? Kill the wabbit, kill the wabbit. I had one of those hats with the flap down on the ears, going out through the audience looking for
lots of people think I'm American for some reason. But I'll tell you, I'll tell you where I got my name from, Glenn from. My mum saw a photograph in Life magazine in the 50s when she was pregnant with me of that sailor kissing that girl in Times Square. And he's called Glenn McQuarrie.
Wow.
And she saw that photograph, and I'm named after him. So my association with Americana and the United States begins before I was actually born.
Can I ask you what the B stands for?
It stands for Barry.
Barry. Okay, I
Yeah.
probably knew that, but I've just forgotten.
Well, there
Okay.
was another great story there. I used to do a lot of work when I was drawing Postman Pat and drawing these animated characters years ago. I used to go to the studio that gave me the work, and mine, I always saw my name, Glenn D. Fleming, and there was this big debate between these guys about what my middle name was. And I used to go into the office, into the reception, and pick up a parcel, and it'd say, I wouldn't tell them what it was, and so they were trying to guess. And it took about 6 months before I finally told them. They never got it, and I'd get a parcel, and the girl would know I was coming for it, and it would say, for the attention of Glenn Beelzebub Fleming, or Glenn Barabbas Fleming, right? Glenn Bernard Fleming.
And that was them trying to guess your name, your middle name. Wow.
Yeah, they never got it. So it's Barry with a double R-I-E, not a Y. So, but I've had a great time. I've had some bad times, but I've had more good times.
Yeah, and one of your probably the favorite story because of mine from you, it's been you got to marry your sweetheart.
Yeah, that's a story. Helen and I met back in August the 16th. It was 1973. I was 18 and she was 16. We went out for a couple of years, went to college together, and then we split up. And I didn't see her or speak to her for 25 years. And it's ironic that I wrote this. When I started going out with her, I was researching this.
Mm-hmm.
This not this book, but this situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was 10 years old then, the shooting, and I was researching that, and I carried on researching that, and I went to America, went to Dallas, and all that kind of thing. I wasn't seeing her then, and I didn't speak to her for 25 years, and then I wrote that book finally got it. Well, I wrote it in 1991, but nobody published it. I don't know why. And then somebody published it, and I sent her a copy because I figured she was part of it. I've not seen her for 25 years, quarter of a century. I knew she was married. I never got married. I was only ever going to marry Helen. I never got married. And then I thought, well, I'll send it to her. I didn't know where she lived, so I sent it to her mum and dad's. Now, she tells me the other side of the story is that her dad said there a parcel had arrived from her, and she was expecting a parcel from somebody else. So she thought it was that. So after a month, she didn't reply. I put my address in or my phone number in, and she didn't reply. And I thought, oh, well, she's got it. She don't want to know, which was fair enough. And then I got a phone call one Saturday afternoon, and it was from Helen. And she said to me, I said, oh, like I was stunned, 25 years since I'd seen her.
Right.
And then she said, I just got your book. Thanks. It's great. Thanks very much. My dad's having a barbecue. Do you want to come to the barbecue? So I said, yeah, when is it? And she said, now. So I went. So I drove to their house, and there she was. And I was walking up the drive. Now I knew the guy she'd married. I knew, I'd met him a couple of times before the 25 year, if you understand what I mean, in the pub. And I was walking up the drive, and he was at the top of the drive with Helen's dad cooking sausages and whatever. And they turned and they saw me and said hello. And if they hadn't, and I saw Helen from the back, and if they hadn't have turned and seen me, I would have turned on my heel and gone, because I thought, boom, 25 years on, 30 years on since we split up, bang, it just hit me like that again, like it was yesterday since I'd seen her. But they'd seen me, so I couldn't run. And then from there, it developed, and then we got married in 2010. So, we've been married 15 years this year.
You talked about you two being more isolated as you get older. Do you have any plans for a holiday or anything?
We're fixing it up. We're fixing it up right now, and we're finally getting our acts together. We're coming over to the States to meet some people and have a break. And but we might be going over to Anglesey, near where they filmed The Prisoner, in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Somewhere
that would be
around
a
there.
Trip.
Yeah. But it's only about what, 40 miles from me anyway, and I've never been.
I think during Tom Baker's tenure, they went there too and did one of their
All right.
storylines.
Right, I don't know, but I've never
Yeah.
been. It's only about 40 or 50 miles away. I should go.
Yeah, yeah. Only 17 episodes. I do remember that floating white
Yeah,
bubble ball, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it kind of sticks with you, you know.
yeah.
I don't
Port
know where
Mary,
that
Port
kind of
Mary, Port
yeah.
Merion, it's called. So yeah, I'd like to go there. There's lots of. I want to go. There's lots of. I want to go to Antarctica.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we might be going down to Australia. We're retired now, you see, so we're footloose and fancy free. So we're just working a few things out.
Yeah.
Got people in.
So
I've got cousins in Australia. We can go and stay
you're
with.
only
So,
as young as you think you are, they say. So in your
yeah,
mind, are you like 18? What
maybe
age would you be?
25.
25. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, a bit of experience, been around a bit.
Right.
You know, so yeah, it's we're having a great time. Having a
Yeah.
great time. And Helen's an artist as well, so there's always that. We talk about art a
Yeah, I
lot.
was going to ask you about her ceramics and all like that.
Yeah,
How's that coming?
yeah,
You know,
she's still
always.
doing it. We're just in the process of building her a new studio, so you know, she's going to be moving into that soon. So yeah, we just carry on. We just carry on.
The kilns kind of smell sometimes, don't they? With the I know in high school they had some type of clay that just stank
Oh, I
throughout
don't
the
know.
school.
I don't know, but it won't be in the house.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
If
I've
you do
got
ceramics, some of that stuff smells. You know,
well,
kind of like an
she,
oil painting. You know,
well, she can answer that. But she made this of. I think I've shown you this of hatch. This is about 8 inches high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She made that. Look at that.
Yeah, I like that she didn't glaze it. She just kind of stained it. I like it.
I asked her not to glaze it, but there's his. She did his boots as well. That's a print of his boots on the back of
Very
the book.
reminiscent of Neil Armstrong's.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
what it's for. Yeah, that's what it's for.
Uh-huh.
Those are his boot prints. Because
Where do you think Hatch comes from in your mind? I mean,
well, over the year, he's been around about 40 years now, and over the years, he's people say he's me. People say he's me.
well, I mean, I know with my characters, you know, they're a bit of me, you know, depending on what character it is. It's like that's the best way I know to explain some of the characters. It's like Inner Man. That's kind of like the more philosophical thinking type person. This other character may be another facet of my personality.
Yeah, I think everybody does that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think what it is I think he is like me because he walks around bewildered all the time. He can't believe what's going on. That's what it is. But the thing is, I tell you, he lives on his own. For those people who don't know, he lives on his own on an asteroid, on this asteroid there, right? And if you look, you can see him. You can see him. Can you see him there?
Yeah.
See him? Right. He lives on his asteroid on his own. And I'll show you some strange things happen to him. Like here, he's dressed as an Apollo astronaut because I wanted him to be an Apollo astronaut, right? But I'll show you. This is one of the weird things that happens to him. You saw the pyramid. He's here. Just hang a second. Thank you. Helen's just brought him. There he is.
There you go.
Look at that. How good is that? Look at that.
That's great. Now, if somebody purchased that for $10,000, you will deliver that to them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there was method in the madness because we don't want to get rid of him really, but we figured for 10 grand and a trip anywhere on the planet is a good enough thing. But nobody bought it. So. But this is the.
But now it is still up for grabs, right, on your campaign?
Oh yeah, and that's the kind of thing that happens to him. Can you see him over here? He's up in the. He's there, and that's happened. Spaceship, Roswell. So,
well, if I ever come to England, I'm going to have to look you up, and at least say hi, right?
Of course, yeah, they are.
That's little Norman Rockwell. Homage there. Now, how do you view Norman Rockwell?
He is an illustrator. He's brilliant. He's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
He's an illustrator painter, isn't he? He's not a. That's the way I would describe his work. But
Yeah.
genius,
But
fantastic work.
now illustrators and graphic designers and things like that, they wind up in sort of fine art museums along with the other,
Yeah,
what
it's a
we
mix
call
and match,
fine art
isn't it?
too.
Yeah, it's a mix and match, isn't it? It's a
Mm-hmm.
he's an artist. He does a lot of things. But I consider
I,
myself
I
an
would
artist
call him
because I
a
do so
great
many things.
caricaturist.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But different from somebody like Mort Drucker in Mad
Definitely.
magazine, because
Yeah.
he's brilliant. Mort Drucker's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I
But
wish I could do
he really
cartoons.
captures it. I guess the attitude of people. I don't know.
He captures the essence of them, doesn't he?
Emotions, yeah,
And
essence of
he's got that eye. He's got a really good eye for capturing what it is that makes a person. So, along with Jack Davis as well. Those are great people.
PBR says, "Wow, Glenn sure is a way cool dude."
Well, I've been called worse. A lot worse than that. So,
Yeah.
but thank you.
Yeah.
No, basically, I'm an artist. I just like to write, draw, ink, color, everything. I like to try things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of, I know with me, especially in painting and stuff, it's like new materials or new, I think there's a little bit of experimental and scientist in creative genius. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see.
You
Yeah,
know,
I can see what you mean. Yeah.
yeah. Not every experiment succeeds, does it? It's rubbish, but at least
Well, it's like life, isn't it? It's life knocks you over. It's not. It's about getting up, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And I've done drawings when I've not been happy with it, but I never throw anything away. I've got a lot of work, a lot of stuff that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Probably going to throw it in the bin when I'm not here. But I never throw anything away, and I would advise people not to. As you can see, I never throw anything away.
Yeah.
That's
So
only part of it.
if a young wannabe came to you and said, "Glenn, give me some sage advice about art," what would you tell them?
I'd say find out what kind of art you like, look at it, read about it, find out who's done it, because nothing's new, and work the hell out of it. And don't be discouraged, because you will be discouraged and people will try to discourage you, but put up with it, get through it, never give up, keep going, and just do it. But do it. I do most things. I've been lucky because I've done a lot of work in my 40 odd years in graphics that I've basically done for myself and got paid for it. So I would, with the jobs I've accepted to do, I've wanted to do most of them. I've done a lot of work with it. We're just there, but I've done a lot of concept work that I wanted to work on, and getting paid is secondary to me. That's why I'm not rich.
Yeah. I was playing sports, but it was not till college till I found my sport, and that was fencing. And fencing taught me one thing, because I was kind of a natural at it. It's like learn a skill and learn to do it skillfully. And I guess it's the same thing with art. In those matches, sometimes it was the only sport that I really slipped into the zone, where you're instinctively making moves without thinking about it. Does the same thing apply to art, you think?
Yeah, you've got to have the discipline and you have to accept the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And you set your own challenges, and other people will certainly give you challenges. I was the person when I started work, when I was working in graphic studios, I was the person who never turned down a job. I never turned down overtime. I never turned down anything because I wanted to learn. And then what happened was that later I would always be the first person to be asked to do overtime. I would always be the first person to do the nicer job, the illustration job, because I have enthusiasm for things. And I just like doing things. I like reading. I like drawing. I like traveling.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big world out there. Go and see some of it.
Well, last question, Glenn.
Yep.
what's the difference between a 25-year-old Glenn and where you're at now in life? I mean,
I've got more
when it
money.
comes to approaching artwork, because
I've
you were
got more.
talking about being older and your attitudes changing
Yeah,
towards life in general.
I don't think my artwork has changed that much. I've got better at it in the way I do it.
Mm-hmm.
The practice makes perfect type of thing. But I've got more money now. But I'd swap my money for not having achy knees.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. But in terms of artwork,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to be really famous when I'm not here, which is pointless.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I said
So
last question, but you throw it out there in the debate. It's like famous for what?
I don't know.
Your
Stuff I
journey,
do.
your journey,
Yeah, my
I
journey.
guess.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
journey. Yeah, yeah.
because it seems to be,
Well, these
multifaceted.
you see, there's good in everything. You see, because I wouldn't be here now with
Mm-hmm.
you and all these
Mm-hmm.
podcasts I've done over these past 2 or 3 years if it wasn't for COVID. Because what
Yeah.
COVID did, it forced us back in our caves, didn't it?
Yeah,
Well, it's true, isn't it? We went back into our caves, but we still
Yeah.
wanted to look out of the window, and the window was the computer to talk to you, or
Mm-hmm.
to talk to Randy or Russ. I mean, Russ lives 250 miles from me. You could walk. I could walk to Russ's house.
Mm-hmm.
You see, and I would never have known him but for this.
Yeah.
So everything is just fantastic, you know. But I still like getting on aeroplanes and going there and really meeting people, you know.
Yeah. That's why I ask you about, do different places have different sort of
Yeah,
vibes to them? Yeah.
yeah. I want to go to Norway and have a look around there. You know, I want to go everywhere. I think there's 185 countries, probably about 15 that you shouldn't go to, and a 20 that you can't go to. But let's just say there's probably about 130 countries out there, and I want to go on them all. I want to go to Antarctica. I want to go to the North Pole. I want to go everywhere. I doubt I
I have
will, but
I have been remiss, and as PBR asked a question, I have not put up the link yet to Hatch, but link is down in the description, and I
yeah.
will drop it in the chat right now for everyone. Just let me bring it up here. There we go. Hatch Annotated. Something you want to say about that before we get out of here?
Yeah, it's all there. This has got lots of published and unpublished artwork in it. It's got his sort of his journey, his story, if you like. It's got pencil work in it. It's got inks. It's got how I do it. It's got old strips like that. Those are from the 80s. And it's also got. Let me just show you. Oh, this is a good one with how I work with the rough and the finished artwork. All right. And then it also has, and this is a really big claim to fame here. Look at this. It has somewhere the great Jack Kirby holding Hatch artwork in his studio talking to me. So you can read about that. But yeah, it's let me show you this before you go. This is another homage.
Here's his Fun My Comic, Hatch Annotated, and here it is how you can reach him on Facebook.
Yeah, you can contact me just about. Here we go. Anywhere. This one's. I haven't finished this story yet, but there we go. Oh, Easter Island. Yeah, no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. So that's the pencil work and the finished painting there. So
it's
yeah,
kind of a spiritual journey to go to a place like that, isn't
it,
Glenn?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. And for all those who don't know, I'll give you one guess. The H on his jumper, what do you think is called Hatch? What do you think that stands for?
Well, I would say Hatch, but
no, it stands for Helen.
Not. Helen. Okay. All right. Well, that should have been a no-brainer. That's a nice little tribute. That's a nice little tribute.
Helen gives me the best stories for Hatch. She has the best ideas. and
Mhm.
I've got a book with millions of drawings of him and millions of ideas. And I try and put some. I'll try and get some new strips done from her
Well, since
ideas.
she's the point of conversation, I've got to break my rule again. One more question,
Okay.
because you're a little bit older, not much. I'm going on 60 come November. But uh, do you understand women at your age? Do you understand women at all?
I found out a long time ago that I never will, so I don't try.
Good
but
answer. Good answer.
but
That's all I got too. It's like I
but
don't
I
know.
have to say, of all the people I know,
Hmm.
males, nobody likes women more than I do.
There you go. Well, I might
Women,
disagree with you,
women the best.
but
Women the
anyway,
best. Women the
one
best
out
thing.
of 100's not bad.
Well, that depends who you've met, and I've met some not so clever ones, but on the whole,
I've
women are
got some of
brilliant.
that Doctor Who psychic paper. Now that's a new thing, I think. Doctor Who, but it says
Yeah.
lover, not a fighter. So,
Well, women are great.
yeah, women are great. I mean, God designed them. It's like, wow, I got my money's worth out of that rib. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love that you didn't hesitate. You went right into that. How I met Helen, like you were telling it for the very first time. It's a lovely
Yeah.
story. That's the best thing you've ever said to me. It's that you married your sweetheart.
Yeah. Like I said, when we split up, I was 20, she was 18. We went out for a couple of years, and when we split up, I was never going to marry anybody else. And
Mm-hmm.
I was 55 when I married her. I just turned 70, so we've got another 16,400,000 years
And
together,
that kind of wipes
at
out the
least.
25 years that you didn't stay, that you weren't together, right? Because it's like, yeah, but I've got her now,
Yeah.
and that's all that matters.
Well, I've said before, time is an illusion everywhere. Everywhere in the universe is now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah,
enjoy
we're
it.
all on the same time in a way, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
all we
So,
got's now, but your now is different from my now.
but don't forget, you see, us English, we
Yeah.
tell the world when to eat because it's all from Greenwich Mean Time.
Mm-hmm.
The way the Earth turns, we tell the Germans when they can have lunch. So that's how brilliant English
Yeah, that
people
should
are.
bring a smile to your face every day, right?
Yeah.
You can have your bratwurst at.
2 hours after I do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Glenn, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks
It's
for
been a
having me
hoot
on. It's been
as
great. Yeah.
usual.
Yeah.
Thanks for kind of giving us an overview of much more than just your books, a lot of
Yeah.
your experiences, and a lot of your memories and stories, and just your time. And please tell Helen, thank her for me as well.
I will do. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been good. I've enjoyed it. I'll come on
Okay.
again.
All right.
And we'll do
Well,
that John Buscema book.
absolutely. Yeah, we're going to get on that because I'd like to have that out at least by early next year.
Well, get
I
the
mean,
stuff to
actually
me.
in people's hands and done.
I can't do anything without the content.
No, I know it. Working on it, buddy.
Good. Okay.
Take care, and please come back as Glenn does often in the chat to watch us on the 4 o'clock shadow every day.
Yeah, I
At
will
4
do.
Central. And it's
That's
late
great.
for him over there. I'm amazed. We're going nearly 2 hours, and he'll pop in at the end and go, "What's going on here?" I'm like, "You're still up? Wow, insomnia."
I think in my 70 years, I think I've probably had about 15 nights sleep.
Yeah.
I just find it difficult. If I
Well,
don't go to sleep straight away, I'm up all
I'm
night.
finding as I get older, I don't require as much sleep. Now, it really depends on what you're doing. Maybe we're slower paced at life, but when I work hard, yeah, I go out like a light. But in the off season, yeah, I'm like blink, but I do enjoy my rest, and I love coming up from that dream state, and that's where a lot of the ideals come. write those dreams down, or
I'll tell you what I've been doing recently. I've been dreaming a lot, having nightmares a lot. And this morning I woke up about 6 o'clock being attacked by crocodiles. So I don't know what that means.
Maybe it goes back to that handbag.
It might be, yeah. I got approached by an alligator when I was in Florida once. That was a bit scary.
Propositioned, were you?
Yeah, he liked the look of me. I was stopped by I was at Cape Canaveral. I was going to see the astronaut thing, the Saturn V rockets and all that. And I pulled over on this. There's a causeway over one of the rivers there, and I pulled over just to look at the view because I could see the vertical assembly building. The big square building that the Apollo Saturn V's were built in, that big square. I could see it on it, so I got out just to look at it, and it was like a little bayou, I think they call it, and it was like the causeway was going over. I was just about to go onto the causeway, and I pulled over, and I was on the grass, and there was a verge about 10 feet incline into this little bayou thing, and I saw this sort of log moving towards me. And I saw it it was moving at the corner. I'm looking over there, and I just saw it at the corner of my eye. And I looked, and it moved towards me. It turned. And I realized
a moving log. Wow.
And then I thought, oh shit! And then it started going faster. So I got back in the car and drove off. It was an alligator.
Yeah.
It was coming to say hello.
Yeah, they do have those in Florida for sure. Yeah.
Well, this one took a liking to me, I think.
It would probably blow our mind the times that we've been out and about and in danger and didn't even know it.
Exactly, yeah.
I can remember a time I stepped on a water moccasin, coiled up, and I won the high jump that day. I went, whoa! No, scared me.
Well, I'll tell you,
all of a sudden I was like, they're in the trees, they're everywhere.
Another scary moment of mine was when I was in I was in Dallas when the House Select Committee on Assassinations were there in 1978. I was doing my research, and some people talked to me and some people wouldn't speak with me. And I was in this hotel, and outside I was on the 7th floor, and in the middle of the night somebody was desperately trying to get into my room, and the only way out was through the door where they wanted to come in and the window which didn't have a fire escape. And I was scared.
Yeah.
So there you go. So I think somebody must have been drunk and lost their way,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But scary. So I've been in a few scary situations. I got detained in Iraq, in Baghdad. That's another story. Yeah, I've had a few scary moments.
Yeah. For me though, I've always kept my calm. I've turned over in a gas truck with 2,000 gallons of gas, one spark, and boom. I've ran under a combine on a motorbike. There's been times where I've ran off the road going 83 miles an hour.
I was in a motorway pileup, and not one car hit me. There was carnage all around, and nobody touched me.
Wow.
Somebody was looking after me that day.
Yeah.
And a pileup, 20 car pileup, and I'm in the middle of it in a brand new car, and nothing happened to me.
Last year I had a scare. That was probably I was coming back from spraying mosquitoes. I was in the spray truck, and this one deer, and then two, and then a whole herd, and I'm like, what? I split the herd. No wonder my hair's white. If it wasn't, it would be. It was like, wow, they just keep coming, don't they? Eventually had to put on the brakes,
Oh dear.
Oh my God. I thought one was going to come in the windshield with me.
Yeah. They would do.
Which, there's been people killed that way,
Yeah.
So driving back in the dark, you had to watch, especially, for deer and I've seen coyotes and all kinds of stuff, try and cross the road, and you're like, and the possums, I swear, here in Arkansas, they're suicidal.
Well, it's crazy because when I was in California once, we were parked up in an RV car park thing, and the sign, when you went in, the sign said, "Do not leave food in your car because the bears will rip the doors off."
Yeah.
You think, what we're doing here,
Yeah, I've seen film footage of where they take like locked trash bins and they're steel, and just, man, the power of a bear is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just bent that thing up like it was a
I mean,
lunchbox and go, what have we got in here?
I
It's
mean,
amazing.
like an alligator, you're not going to be able to reason with it, are you?
No,
If it was
no.
a person, you could maybe reason or do something, but you're not going to stop a bear or an alligator
Yeah.
if they want.
Apparently he thought he had a chance with you to get to know you better,
That's
you know?
right.
Yeah. Because he's coming after you. They're pretty quick once they get going.
I know. That's why I got back in the car, because I knew he'd be up that incline in no time
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
my leg in his mouth. You know,
They've been
so
known
no.
to like attack tires and things like that, and chew on them. I mean, you know, it's
Well,
amazing.
I shot off
Yeah.
100 miles an hour. You know, I went faster than the rocket I was going to look at.
Right. It's like, what's that? Oh, that's Glenn. He got fat-handed by the tail. Whee! Yeah.
So, anyway.
But those scary situations I talked about, I don't know. I just remain calm. And that's probably where I've survived is I
Yeah,
just keep my head about me. If you panic, you're gonna die. Like that
yeah,
one time I ran off the road, I fishtailed the vehicle 12 times before I got it up I had to let it decelerate. I couldn't put on the
yeah,
brakes or you'd be sliding everywhere and lose control and maybe roll over. So you just kind of got to ride it out,
yeah. It's
uh,
scary.
yeah. But,
Scary.
the time to be scared afterwards, like, wow, I could have really died, but, while you're there, you got to kind of keep your mind. And I've
But
been
not
good
as
about
scary. But not as scary as jumping out of a C-47 into a flooded field.
Yeah. Well, you can imagine what some of those young boys, and they were young men that, I mean, they didn't know, Europe, they didn't
Don't know
know
anything,
where
did
they
they?
were going and what was and those paratroopers, I don't know if you call them paratroopers, but the ones that went in on the gliders
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and crashed, and a lot of them were killed, a lot
yeah.
of them that had 40 something percent maybe die.
A lot. Yeah, just as
Yeah,
they
on
got to
those
the ground.
gliders.
Yeah, yeah.
Not one of the best, but they were really invading
Well,
every way they could. It was amazing.
there's one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's just
Hey, Fanta.
incredible. Anyway, I'll have to let you go.
Anyway, we're gonna get out of here. Come visit us again
I will. Thank you.
on the 4 o'clock shadow, and tomorrow we'll have the Rex X and Apex show here with Omer Glitch, and then Timothy Olsen is going to join us for about 10 minutes, and he'll talk
Right.
about his project. And then I'll be on Apex After Dark, and of course, 4 o'clock shadow every day on this channel at 4 Central and 10 in the UK. Quite late for them, but a lot of people go to sleep to my melodious voice. Theater of the mind, folks. That's visuals sometimes. Anyway, we're gonna get out of here. Thank you, Glenn, again for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks
you,
very
Rod,
much.
for your time as
I
well,
will.
because it's always a sacrifice. Anyway,
I'll see you later.
keep collecting, keep reading good comics like Hatch, like Devil Fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Atlantean. Come on.